tonight we're going to, it is a workshop for our department or our committee. So it'll only be us talking, anybody can listen, but we are not taking questions, answers, comments from anybody tonight. We're going to start with CIP and then we're going to go through the prelims of the budgets because next week we have fire and highway coming in. It'll be a short meeting. The 13th, we have the police department coming in. And I figure once we're done with him, we'll all be ready to go home. That's my personal philosophy, and I really am hoping that we won't need a meeting before Christmas.
I do have to excuse myself at 9:30 this evening.
That's fine, I hope to shoot through this pretty quickly. CIP, everybody have their CIP stuff?
There's one here.
I can share yours, so you can do it with mine. I'm sorry, Heather? I must have had Neil's copy. I don't know where Neil is. I haven't heard from Neil. Jeff called me and said he wouldn't be here tonight.
Do I have a phone number for you in case I need to let you know about stuff or anything?
There, have you sent that to her?
Should we?
You did? Okay.
We go.
But just so everybody is aware, a lot of us have been on this committee before. Going forward, these are going to be meetings that we need to be a little more dialed into, and everybody needs to be keeping an eye on whatever they picked to be at next week. It's the 13th when police is here. Matt is actually going to go to John Stark and listen to the high school meeting because we need to have PD here and get through that. That'll be in 2 weeks. On the 6th, we have fire and highway. That'll be a really short meeting. It'll be easy. Ricky Hippler's going to be here to help. There he is. Help address questions. Anybody who's got all the handouts, make sure you use the piles.
Right
You
there.
can take one, and there's a whole bunch there now. So let's start with the CIP requests. Let's start because it's first on my list. Department is highway.
This one has a bunch of notes in it. You want to swap?
Yes. Make your own notes.
This is the piece I first
What highway is asking for?
Page 6, I believe.
Yes.
Were we supposed to bring that?
Yes.
Oh.
But you can share mine.
No, I can share hers.
All right.
If I have it.
She doesn't, I don't think we have it.
Highway wants a new 10-wheel plow
I didn't
truck. Road construction, reconstruction,
Yes.
bridge improvement, and backhoe. The two hot ones, the one we do normally, which is the road reconstruction, that's usually passes because we need our roads. We want to talk about the plow truck. Pros, cons, how we're feeling about plow trucks.
Yeah, I like plow truck.
I think I need it.
Anybody else want to talk about plow trucks?
Could we get an idea of what the total recommended is and how that compares to last year before we go to the individual items?
Total CIP recommendations?
Yeah.
I think that's on the back, isn't it? It's one of those many graphs. CIP is higher this year than last year.
Okay, I'm on page 21, bottom right-hand corner.
Still trying to get there.
2017, we spent 587,000.
Tax.
They're proposing to double that to 1,033,000.
Yes,
Not
they
quite
are.
doubling.
And so looking at that as we make notes, what things are we seeing? I happen to agree, I like plow trucks, I happen to think we need them.
What's the story? They bought another plow, the other was tools totaled last year. Was there any insurance claims on any of that? So they lost 2 plows last year. They just replaced one the week before last, well, a week ago, Monday night.
I saw Benji said that was out of last year's budget.
They just bought another one the other night for $7 grand.
Naomi? Do you know anything about that? I do know that one of the plows was damaged in an accident, not our fault, somebody crashed into it. And as far as the insurance, that's between the town, we're not involved with litigation for the town. We're simply looking at what they're doing as far as how we get reimbursed from an insurance company from an accident. That's a whole different wheelhouse for us. So we're comfortable with the plow truck?
No,
You don't like plow trucks?
I'm not comfortable with anything unless we look at the entire picture. If you go one by one, you can make a wonderful argument for each of these. But unless we understand the total impact on the tax rate,
We can't do that until January. And I agree with you, is this the time we look at that? We don't want to deal with the other, what the schools are,
Yeah,
what town is, what.
I understand that, but
And this isn't even the warrant article, we're just talking about
I see.
Yeah, we're just flushing this out before they come and actually have hard discussions with us to see where we're leaning pros and cons. I mean, if I look at the whole, if you want to look at the back page, page 21, to me, road, and this is just personal opinions and everybody's is certainly, hopefully giving them today. I happen to like road reconstruction even though my road is gravel. Anytime Benji would like to change that, I'd be excited with that.
My personal feeling is reconstruction's too low,
But we're getting extra money from the state this year.
that's a
every time.
that's a one-shot.
Yes, it is, yes, it
But I
is.
still think it,
Nonetheless, we don't control that.
Right.
no, I
that's
know
it.
that.
Bridge reconstruction fund, I don't drive on Peasley Bridge, but I suppose somebody likes the bridge.
Well,
It
that's
needs to be done.
that's not the Peasley. That's not the Peasley bridge. That's the 4-year, the bridge reconstruction.
Right, right.
4 years, full money in for the 3 that we know are there and potentially whatever else happens, so that we're ready to go when the state
Yeah.
provides the funding. This would be year 2 of that.
Right.
Where's the additional state money that someone mentioned?
That's not in this, that doesn't.
But we already have that. That came in this year.
Yeah, that doesn't work in the CIP.
That was rolled over from 2017.
And where is it for 2017?
Well, it wouldn't be in CIP. CIP has nothing to do with that. If it's coming in from Sununu and the state, that doesn't come in under CIP.
How much is that, Benji?
236,000. We got that this year, I just chose not to spend it because I wasn't ready.
But also at the last meeting, when Benji got asked, he has the ability to spend that the next year in addition to the normal highway fund.
Yeah, we're behind on
He's just planning, trying to plan it. so
Now,
that
if
it's
we
well-
hadn't paved
So that it's well
Mount
spent.
Dearborn Road, we could move it somewhere else. Anyway, things that are still on deck in the CIP. The library, the ever impressive $25,000 a year when they have money in their own coffers for a study.
That's coming back.
The only thing, it's just a thought on it, I'm not necessarily in favor of it, but
Right,
I see 2 conflicting things here. That there's the idea for the library of seed money over 4 years to plan what we really want to have for a library, community center, and this and that in town, on one path. On the other path is the selectmen saying we want $49,000 for the tower on the old town hall, and then more to follow on this. So you got this path over here, I'm saying, the old town hall is close to the library. Are we gonna preserve the old town hall? If we are, it can be used as a community center.
exactly.
If we're not, then I think this makes sense to see what you really want over here. If you're gonna bulldoze down the old town hall, which I don't think.
No, the foundations on the town hall
So-
are solid.
So it would be nice if they would merge their ideas together in a concept of turning the old town hall into more general use that the library talks about.
Well, to go off on that tangent, I spent 5 hours up at the high school. All 3 schools were built by the community and were supposed to be open so the community could hold functions in the schools. The high school's more than amenable to do that. In fact, their philosophy is instead of having high school library stuff down at the library, they think it should be held at the high school. They have the room to showcase it. It is paid for by community funds. They don't understand why we need a community center. The library person comes from a town that just built a community center, so he's all about that. But he has not figured out any of the history. At the last meeting, I asked him if he realized the septic system could not be increased for a larger building because they're at capacity, and he hadn't even looked into that. They have no concept of land if they want to build a new building. There isn't enough room to actually go big and better because we can't enhance the septic system. That means you'd have to build somewhere else. And the statement was, well, this building's collapsing and the town hall is collapsing. Having gone further with that, this isn't collapsing, the town hall isn't collapsing, and we have 3 schools. If we need to have programs for children, we can certainly use the schools for that. We've paid for them. That's my personal opinion. But they have money in their funds. They have library trust funds. They have a group that's supposed to be raising money for the library, but they haven't done any of that. They just want us to come over with that. Now, I lived in a different town, and we had tons of studies for the library, and we paid for tons of plans, and they still haven't done the addition to the library, and that's been 15 years in the making. So I don't know.
And that particular town still uses the elementary school for the community center.
Yeah, and it
And
works.
it'll never change.
It works just fine. Bolton Park is one that doesn't sit well with me. The argument I heard was we need pavilions because of the elements when they're having functions down there. Well, last time I checked, if they're having children in functions out in the fields, the children are out in the elements. If the parents don't like it, bring an umbrella, put a coat on. And then somebody said, well, if they're having picnics, what if it rains? My philosophy is, don't have a picnic, go home, whatever you want to do, but I'm not here to make sure everybody's got coverage in the whole town. That's just me. I do think we need a highway truck. I've spent time listening to Benji. I've seen the fleet and I've studied it. But that's, again, my personal opinion. Cruisers.
Wait, I haven't tried to talk about the plowing or
Yeah,
something.
the plow. The cruisers, we're due for 2 new cruisers. We know we need cruisers. One thing you need to know, you have in your hands a budget for the police department. The original police department budget proposed by the chief was 38%. The Board of Selectmen brought that down to 17%. But he was proposing 3 brand new employees on top of the 12 he doesn't have. He wanted to put in an officer up at the schools, and at the school board meeting, Matt was there when we were doing this, and he did his presentation. 3 of the school board members pointed out that the kids don't put locks on their lockers because they feel so secure. He said that we needed police to provide and study any psychological issues that could occur up there, and I pointed out we have a full-time psychologist and a psychiatrist. I saw no reason to put the police department in there. Then he said that we needed to build better relations with the kids. I said the police department could hold their own programs at the police department, but it didn't need to be put on the taxpayers. And his final thing was what happened in California, and oh my God, what happens if it hits here?
What happened in California?
They had a shooting, and it was rather recent. And one of the school board members pointed out most people in Weare have guns. Secondly, you can't run around creating terrorism, and he said, well, they're better at spotting crime, and we happen to have a principal that is very well schooled for what he did in the military, who's good at reading people. So that didn't go over well with the school board.
They pointed out that California school had a resource officer, and it didn't stop the shooting.
Well, I pointed out, because I had some information, there were 2 of those schools had officers on point at the time, and it didn't solve the problem. And basically, he is trying to scare people into filling more positions that we haven't filled the 12 we've got. We're still down 2, and we don't have 2 part-timers also. So,
And then pull the cruiser out of what's on.
pardon me?
The cruiser's not in there, is it?
No. But he wanted to put a cruiser in this year to be in as a line item, and a cruiser is a warrant article. The Board of Selectmen are sending the 3 full-time people as a warrant article, and both cruisers are going as a warrant article. But they did not.
So the 70%, it does not include 2 cruisers, does not include the additional people?
Those are all going warrant
So what
articles.
does it include?
We'll get to that after we go through CIP.
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
Lori,
let's talk, see.
the $85,000 here for cruisers, how many does that buy?
2,
Why is it that we got 3 for $107,000 last year?
We didn't.
we didn't. The figures by our police chief for what it would cost to outfit the cruisers were a year back. So we actually had an increase on that, so they didn't come out to that, they were higher.
How much did we spend?
Naomi, do you know offhand?
Over 120.
Okay, that's something
So
we'll get into.
where did the delta between 107 and 120 actually come from elsewhere in their budget?
Yes, that's the one thing I do want to discuss real quick before we go further on this. Last year, when we agreed to what the budget would be and what we would back in a deliberative session, the majority of this group decided to cut it by $100,000, and I was not pleased with that. I will tell you, after watching where money has gone this year and how money has been funneled, I am a firm believer that the police budget needs to be hacked to smithereens.
In.
He has managed to, for his cruisers not having enough, needing more money because his figures were wrong, we solved that. Then out of the $100,000, that his percentage that was supposed to be taken out, we had various employees who weren't paying because they were off the grid, you know, they were in the military or something. So we had that surplus to solve that problem. Our budget for legal this year, and a lot of it has had to do with lawsuits still funneling in from the police department. That's coming from somewhere. Obviously, we have room. The police department has not been hurting for money, so they have had more than enough. He has not been hurt. Every time he wants something, he's getting it. So I will say that my thought process has changed radically in regards to that, and chop, chop, chop.
Question.
Yes.
If we approve the 2 cruisers in the CIP, and that goes under that article,
Yes.
and there's a separate article for cruisers, what happens? You said the selectmen are going to put the cruisers as a separate article?
Yep, just like we did last year.
Are there any cruisers in the CIP?
Yes, 2.
That's the same
That's-
article.
That's the same article.
I'm sorry. The CIP article is usually one article that has a whole bunch of things in it, including the 2 cruisers.
It is?
No,
Yeah.
everything, last year, we had a warrant article for cruisers, we had a warrant article for, whatever vehicle.
So there's not going to be a CIP warrant article
No.
which contains a number of items?
No,
Each item will be
goes
separate?
as its own, yes,
I see.
yes, and that's what we did last year, and that's what we did the year before.
Does anyone know whether, if a warrant article passes, that precludes the town or the police from, I'm speaking about cruisers, from using budget money to buy a 3rd cruiser?
That's where we have to tighten up on the warrant articles. There was a discussion at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, and I know last year they took money out of surplus to go ahead and start covering the cruisers, and that came up again this year. We may need to consider on our own as individuals or recommending. No means no needs to be very clear, and the wording on those warrant articles needs to be very, very clear.
The idea being if the warrant article is voted down by the populace, then the wording would be such that the chief cannot go and buy a cruiser
But
anyway.
the Dom cannot,
Isn't it?
But I'm asking, that's your proposal?
I'm concerned about that,
That's
yes.
how it was.
Also, if the warrant article says 2 cruisers, can the chief use budget money to buy a 3rd?
Sure, but why are you concerned about that?
Because he's got a lot of money in his budget.
But he should be
But I don't
returning
think,
to
but that's
us.
not his plan. I mean, the thing that they changed here was originally what he was putting forth was the warrant article, he was suggesting through the CIP was 1 cruiser and 1 in the budget, because as he's told us in the past, what he'd like to do is get to basically cars have a 5-year life, useful life. What he'd like to do is get to the point where there's just, it's 1 purchase is in the budget, every 5 years you do.
I'd be glad to consider that for the next budget. For this budget,
Right, so apparently they switched, apparently they switched that up, and they just said they're gonna get 2 cruisers on warrant. So which would be all 5, we've got 3 this year and then 2.
okay.
So I don't think he's looking to get another one back to the cook, if that's what you're wondering.
Yeah, I'm concerned that if warrant articles aren't absolute, then the budget could be used to hire additional people, to get additional cruisers. And I think whatever our decision, we need to make it clear that the warrant article supersedes the budget, in the sense that
Well,
if a warrant article is voted up or down on cruisers, that's it. If a warrant article is voted up or down for additional officers, that's it. They can't be substituted for in the budget, even if there were extra money in the budget to
I
rely on.
thought that was like the state law, are you not, no,
No means no.
I'm not clear. I believe that's the case if the warrant article is turned down.
Right.
yes.
But I don't know if that's the case if the warrant article is approved.
Well, the other question that comes into play is last year they took money out of surplus and applied it for the cruisers. And that's a thought that's coming up now, and that's something that did not set well with a lot of the taxpayers, because they're thinking they can offset the cost out of surplus. And people really, from who I've talked, would rather be able to vote on it and decide whether or not they get the cruisers, as opposed to the Board of Selectmen deciding, well, we really need those, so we're going to take it out of surplus. And that's why we hedged our bets on only putting X amount in, and, well, the tax rate was only 2% on, 2 cents on a dollar, as opposed to being flatline, because they were keeping that in case they needed it going forward. And that's a concern. We're playing funny money.
And I think in the case of cruises, I'll give the town the benefit of the doubt. I think it's a good faith estimate when they develop a warrant article, what it's really going to cost.
Mhm.
And if it's a small amount that has to get added, I think they should have a latitude to do that. But I also agree that if your thing gets turned down, you don't spend $40-some thousand out of your surplus to buy a police cruiser. That's different. If the town says, yes, in good faith, we authorize you, that's the amount that's in the warrant article, what we think it's going to cost, and fine. And if it's a little more, that's fine. But in the case of the highway truck last year, it was just the opposite. I believe it was a warrant article said $215,000, but it came in at less, if I remember. So it's
Well, see, but that doesn't
unbalanced.
make sense, Bill, for one reason. The police chief, he's in charge of these cruisers and getting the costs on them. Just like highway, just like fire, has the ability to go to people and get the hard numbers, have them in hand, and they will hold it. They're all used to dealing with municipalities. Every town deals with these companies, and every town is able to get a solid lock cost in place so that if it passes at town meeting, deliberative session, however you word it, that cost will hold. What our police chief has not done is made sure his figures are on target. And the Board of Selectmen do not look into it, that's not their wheelhouse. So for them to say, well, okay, the warrant article is for this amount, but oops, he's short, now we're gonna take it out of surplus, that's not fair to the
Why are
taxpayer.
they not? So what are you suggesting, you do not buy the cruisers?
No, I think we need the cruisers. Neil was bringing
No,
up
in this case,
where the money
what are you
was.
suggesting, you not buy the cruisers? So we vote for 3, you voted 60,000 and said, and that's gonna cost 65, so we don't buy the cruisers, we only buy 2?
I think the guy needs to learn to be held
Forget about the
accountable.
guy, what do you think should happen that year?
I think it's reasonable. I'm not saying I definitely agree with it, but I'm not saying I definitely agree with it, but it seems a plausible argument that yes, if you give us bad numbers, then you buy 2 cars and have 3/4 of the cash for a third one
It
left
would be
over.
no different than when we did the highway garage. If I gave you bad numbers and people found out that
If
it's
you get us bad numbers, I don't mean you personally, but we don't have a fireworks system.
Right.
So, I mean, that sucks, but
I just,
That wasn't us that did that.
I'm
we're
not rating
into
on
the
people,
suppression
I'm
system,
saying
yeah.
the numbers, you can't get that kind of precision. I don't understand why the town any benefit of
Well,
that.
I think we have to wait until the warrant articles come out, and because Neil's concerned about the wording, correct?
Yes.
So when the warrant articles come out, we can have another powwow, and whoever wants to wrestle with the wording.
We should wait for that. If Neil's concerned about the wording, he should put forth the wording he wants now, we should recommend it to the selectmen, because otherwise, the warrant is the warrant.
That's a good idea. So Neil, do you have something particular you'd like to?
No, I'll check with Naomi, and check with folks in the state and find out what language is necessary to accomplish the purpose that I suggested.
The other thing you need to know is with the, I call it the wrong thing, this SR person for the police department, for the schools.
SRO.
Thank you. They still have an open line on their budget, so they're putting it right into their budget,
When you
so
say they, police or school?
the school.
Thank you.
So if it does not pass on the warrant article side here, for the town, the police and the Board of Selectmen realize that no means no, so he can't hire a new person for the SR person. But the school is under the impression, if it passes, they're entitled to a body.
It's not what they said. What they said at the meeting that I was at, the Weare middle school meeting, was that if any one of the three did not pass, they wouldn't do it.
I heard it did not say that at the high school, did
They
it?
didn't say that.
Did they
I
say
asked that question.
Did they say the opposite of that?
They didn't say the opposite.
They just said they would have to look into it, because that brought up, as I raised the question, we have X amount of cruisers. We have said, if the town says no, then you're gonna want,
What you should do then, next week, you run a meeting, you should bring that up specifically with Lorraine and say, listen, because she's at both meetings. Say, Lorraine, when you were at the Weare middle school meeting, you told that group that if any one of the three entities did not approve the officer, that was it, it would not be, what is the story here? Get her to either
well, is it,
confirm it or not.
when you said three entities, are you talking
Town,
about?
school, high
Okay,
school, regular school, or other schools.
yeah, it's the I want to call them kindergarten, the grade school, the middle school, and the high school.
Well, the grade and middle
Middle
is
school and
one.
Weare together.
Well, they're two different buildings.
Where's
Yeah,
school
but
is
it's
our
just
town.
different.
But the middle and the elementary are one system.
Right,
The high is another system, the town is another system. Those are the three.
but he did ask the question, and I pointed out, so you'll need to ask that again next week, because
And that's the Lorraine, because she was at our meeting.
because that's going to be a very interesting,
Is the SRO in the police budget proposal, or is it to be a separate
it's
one?
part of the warrant article.
Part of
Because
it?
those three full-timers he
Those
wants.
Those are all gonna be on one.
Three, no, they're three separate ones, because they're three separate entities.
No, we're talking about the three new hires that he wants, the SRO being one of them.
Yes.
They're all in one warrant article,
Correct.
which decreases the odds of that passing.
Yes.
He's asking for a lot. So if that doesn't pass, but the school budget's passed with their line items for the
Yes,
SRO, where does that money go?
Yes.
The money lapses.
but
They
just,
can't spend it because they don't have enough in their budget to hire the entire officer. And even if the other school budget puts in, you get 2/3. If the town doesn't kick in the extra third, they don't have the legal.
Then they move it.
It's the warrant article, they don't have the legal.
They spend it on something.
No,
Sports
they-
equipment.
they-
I don't, I'll find that out. I
yeah,
don't think
because
they have
I'm under the
legal authority to
impression
hire.
they can
Would it
move
be
it
a
around
warrant
at will.
article?
They can't hire him, but they can spend it on like sports equipment or something.
Yeah,
And it rolls into their next default budget forever and ever and ever after that.
This is the school budget, is it a warrant article for the school as well, or just?
No, they never do separate warrant articles.
Yeah, and
Hard to-
that wasn't the plan, was it?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
I do have one question regarding the no means no RSA. I know the town is bound by it, our SAU's bound by no means no. And I have not heard a firm answer.
to be honest, I haven't gotten a clear answer on it yet. I mean, they wanted, when they were talking about, what were they going to put in the budget that you almost lost your cookies over?
Oh, they wanted to put in the removal of the oil tanks in the default budget. And I said, no, that's a capital improvement. You can't put that in the default budget because you didn't do it last year.
And they're under the impression they
Well,
can.
The other side of the argument though is they have to do it, so. whether they get-
Find in your budget otherwise.
Oh, okay, all right, so you're giving them pretty advantages.
I think they have to do it.
Okay.
But it's got to be the budget, not the default budget.
Right,
The
and they're
point is,
saying,
let's say the proposed budget fails.
Then they
They don't have to take the money out of the default budget to put to.
yeah, but they've got money in the
Yeah.
default budget.
Yes, they do, because it's a federal DEA, you have to do this.
That's fine, they'll have to find the money in the regular
Right,
budget.
That's
and
what I said,
they
the
do
default
have
budget.
money in.
Not they'll have to
can't
find it in the default budget without that being included in the default.
Right,
budget.
because the default
Right, oh, I see what you're
budget,
saying.
they're
They won't
building,
get, let's assume it's $100,000. The default budget will not be increased by $100,000.
no, but their building maintenance fund is more than capable of covering it, as is one of their other funds that they have spinning around.
If,
I've already checked.
if in fact that particular use is a legal use for that particular fund.
Yeah, it's building maintenance fund, they can use it for that. They just like to stockpile money.
Yes, they do.
I would like to get an answer on the no means no for SAUs, if we can get that.
I'll get that.
Thank you.
Ferret that out, please. You're doing all
In
right.
reading their RSAs, they seem to always combine like any administrative body, which is either school districts or towns or.
That's the interpretation, but I'd love to hear an actual, say yes or no from the state. Just,
Well, what is the state? Are you gonna ask
Yeah,
them? Well, you're gonna get 5 different answers.
I'll try to get the information from two sources. One is the Municipal Association, which deals with these things all the time.
Yeah.
And the second is the Department of Revenue Administration Municipal Division, which is the one that sets the tax rate and is very familiar with budgets.
I've got a question. It was stated a couple of minutes ago that the schools almost never break things up into separate warrant articles. They
Correct.
just deliver their new budget.
Subcontracts.
The town does all the
Yes.
time, get everything broken out. Is that at the whim of the town? Could the town give us one big budget and it's sort of, they're doing things in a way we like, and but that's just an option for them?
Yes,
Okay.
but if you wanted to, you could get 24 of your best friends to sign a warrant article or petition, and for the schools,
And change it.
and put whatever you want in a separate article, and then they would be subject to the same restrictions, no means no, or whatever the answer is to that question.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Okay, which is why, I mean, and
But
the
of
board-
course it has to pass.
But the Board of Selectmen is very much aware of that, and they're very concerned about transparency, so that's why they're very big on warrant articles. And they
Well,
don't
they're
have-
also two different things. The town is a lot more capital investment
Yes,
than the schools. They're not buying plow trucks and graders and new garages and.
right, but it's, going back to this, can we go now to each department and look at everything as opposed to the long list, Neil? Okay,
But isn't the long list a summary of everything that the department's asked for?
As long as you need page 21.
Page 21, the final column, isn't that the entire capital budget right there?
I don't see anything missing.
yeah, we can stick to that, I don't know if you want to look at more details of things.
Well, we already had that meeting, right?
Some people were here.
May I ask Benji a question?
Yes.
Fire suppression,
Yes,
how does that affect our insurance rate?
I don't know that answer.
Okay, something I want to clarify going forward. Benji, along with everybody else, is not really here to answer questions. Benji's going to see us next week, and he will be armed for what he needs to know then. So if we want to say, you want to know how does that affect this, that, or the other, he now can go back and look for that, but there.
Okay, sorry.
wouldn't that
I
question
do
be
have
questioning for the
23.
town?
I do have 23 months on this though, so if there's any questions about that.
You have what?
23 months of dealing with this garage now. So if there was any questions about that, I'd be happy to just chime in.
On this fire suppression system, my understanding was that was voted to be included in the amount that we budgeted for this. For reasons I don't understand, it didn't get included. So instead of, I don't know what we voted, $1.5 million, $1.2 million,
$1.36
$1.36 million, now it's coming up to $1.6 million because there's $1.2 million, or there's 250-something thousand.
Well, and something else you need to know, they put in a suppression wall between the vehicles and
The office.
the office area. So that's there, and it's a 3-hour firewall. So we've already paid out of the taxpayers' money for that. How we got to this is originally,
I
But you don't need to know that?
I don't need
Okay.
to know that. I just wanted to understand.
I would like to
Financial
know that, though, if you
implications.
wouldn't mind. This second over here.
um,
Financially, it was a design build, so we all had pictures in our mind what we wanted. But in the end, you hire a company to design it and to build it. The town chose not to pay for designs and hire a company to build our picture perfect garage. We, as a town, elected to hand that over to a company to do. And then when the numbers came in, they didn't fit, and that's what was cut.
part of the reason.
Understood, but I do need to know what the effect with insurance will be. For example, my understanding on the police department is that we are not really insured. We have an insurance company that pays all of the damage claims or the settlements, and then the town pays back the insurance company over 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is. So it's not insurance.
Guaranteed loan.
It's a prepayment plan, yes.
This is private.
But I don't know that that's the case, but that's the way it seems because we had such huge increases in our insurance premiums as a result of this.
They call it a risk pool.
Yeah.
Well, risk is
Then it's
supposed to be insurance.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Besides.
Well, I mean, Neil was saying it's literally, you know, they pay out $1 million
So
a week.
this was
to pay that money.
explained maybe here recently that all towns do share the cost, but the town that incurred the cost pays the most
Oh, yes.
brunt of it.
It's
That's
a
quite
pool.
reasonable.
It's absolutely a pool. The other thing is, when you're insuring vehicles for a town, and it doesn't matter what vehicle it is, you cannot get insurance for replacement cost coverage. As in, if I told my Expedition, I have on my policy that they will replace it brand new for the little extra that I pay into my insurance policy. They don't do that for towns. They pay for exactly what that vehicle is. So if you lost a 1999 truck,
I thought they do that with fire apparatus. I thought it was replacement value.
it's the same for
Highway as well.
highway as well and PD.
So,
Fire, it does come under a different thing, but Primex does not replace it.
But even so, their insurance coverage will pay the actual cost of the vehicle's actual value.
But this is all based on highway stuff.
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about right
Well, I
now.
know, but I just want to, if that blanket statement is true, that all vehicles are going to be not replacement value, and I think fire is.
Fire comes
replacement.
under a different
Yeah, I just want to correct that blanket statement, that's all.
Yeah. But there was a few people that saw stuff on television that were under the impression that if we have insurance, now whatever goes down in a fire will be picked up all brand new, and that isn't going to happen. That's not going to
Because
change.
it's not really insurance.
No. The other thing,
Can I go back to Neil's point?
Sure.
With the insurance, I assume you're going somewhere with that. So regardless of the answer, what is your take on either or? So my sense is that, talking to the fire chief, the idea behind the suppression system has nothing to do with insurance. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice if it impacted it. But the idea is to avoid the total loss of all the trucks.
well, trucks can be replaced very quickly.
But oh, I see, so you're assuming you're getting them for free?
No, I'm assuming that,
I mean, you're hoping you get them,
I assume that if, maybe I'm wrong, but I assume that if one of our trucks burns, our insurance on the trucks covers that. Is that not the
I
case?
don't think so.
So if a motor blows up and the truck burns,
the insurance will pay for the cost of what that
If a truck is-
is worth right now, yes.
if the truck is being used on the highway, and there's a fire, a car crashes into it, or something ignites, we're not covered?
I don't really know.
But this doesn't suppress that fire.
I understand, so if the truck is parked in the building, and the building burns, there may be fire, the insurance that we have on the trucks, and we may be self-insured, I don't know. The insurance we have on the trucks would likely pay that. I know that's the case with my car.
It didn't happen in Henniker, they got hammered.
But it's the current value of what the trucks are worth, and you're not gonna get a new truck.
I understand that, but that's really an unfair gain to the
No,
town.
if your truck, if you're right, having been in insurance, if you have an accident and your car burns or your truck burns up in that accident, yes, they're gonna have to pay for it.
If for some unknown reason my car self-destructs,
Self-enclosed.
my insurance company will pay me the fair market value of the vehicle at that time. I'm responsible for the rest, which makes sense because I've got the advantage, I've used the rest.
Yes.
So similarly, if all of our trucks are parked in the building, no fire suppression, the building burns, all the trucks burn,
Yeah.
I assume the insurance company for the trucks will pay us the fair market value of the trucks at the time they burned. And the town will have to come up between the new price of the truck and the amount that we get for insurance. And so I want to find out whether that's an economically good deal or it's less expensive to put in the fire suppression system because presumably, not guaranteed, if the building burns, the suppression system would limit the burning and the trucks would be safe.
I believe
Neil, I
you
think
got
that
the
might
information
answer your
here.
questions right there.
So
So that's one perspective, I understand what you're saying, but the other perspective is, if the suppression system keeps it from burning, you don't have to deal with trying to replace the trucks. But on top of the issues you just raised, you don't have the wall, so say it hits in the winter, like in the middle of a snow.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of friction. I mean, it might take a month or two to track down comparable trucks at prices you can afford. And
Yeah, but there are so many guys with trucks who could be hired temporarily to do this kind of thing.
Okay.
Look, let me just look at this thing.
Sure. You can come back to that anytime.
is your phone draining its batteries over there?
It is on.
Oh, thank you. Go to sleep.
I think my question would be, the fire suppression system, what does it really buy? As
Well-
opposed to fire, no, not a different answer, I'm just saying, throwing it out there. You have this wall that's between the trucks where they're parked and the area that the trucks are worked on in the office space. So that, and it's very unlikely that a fire would start over where the trucks are, if you've got some other means of
It's
killing.
actually more likely to start where the trucks are parked.
That's where all the diesel is.
It's where all the work is being done.
Where the work is being done, where the trucks are parked, dead space. Is I believe
Because
the
the
park,
work's being done,
the work is being done on this side.
Right, the wall is between
The
the
wall
work
is
area
between where the
and
work
the
area
storage.
is and where the trucks are parked, is that correct?
So the work area is underneath the offices?
yes.
Yes, the work, yeah, or it's, well, it's
The whole wall,
it's
that's
on
like
this
the
side,
office.
it's on this
Yes.
side of where the firewall is.
Is that true?
What did I miss with you?
So this suppression wall, the offices and places you work on the trucks are on the same side of that wall?
That's it.
Yes.
So if the places you're working on the trucks goes up, the offices go up,
Yes.
doesn't it? Okay.
The trucks don't, the
They
truck,
don't
the truck storage.
No, what about the people?
I don't
Don't care about
I don't
that?
think the fire suppression system was designed for people necessarily. I think it's equipment, primarily for equipment, am I right?
I think so, I think according to the
Well-
fire chief.
Yeah.
When we first built that, they said that that suppression system was strictly that for people to exit and keep them out, get them out safely. It's not gonna put out a major fire, that's a part of those little sprinkler heads are not gonna do.
No, what the chief told me, I just asked him this week, was that it would slow it down enough that they could get there and save the vast majority. They might lose the truck, if there's a truck that started it, that it would keep it slow enough down, people can get out, like you said. And in addition to that, they'd have time to get there to save it going to the rest of the trucks. That's what he explained to me.
Right, on the other hand, water isn't gonna solve the whole problem.
He actually said that water is what you would
It
use.
slows it down, but
No.
it's not all that you use, depending upon what kind of fire it is.
A diesel fire, for example.
Water's not
That
gonna
aids
do
it.
anything for that.
You
What is
almost
it?
have to go
And
chemical.
hydrogen,
That is specifically what I asked him, and he said that's the best kind of system you can use, not to split the fire out, slow it down, every time you get there. And I asked him that specifically, because that was my understanding as well, the diesel thing, he was pretty clear about it.
Well, this one has fire training, I've talked to Bob and,
But Bob is only talking about it, what did he tell you?
I know.
He told me.
well, he did acknowledge that there are several different types of fire, that water cannot slow down, and that's when you need a chemical system. And the other problem we have is
That's not what he said.
Hanford has one?
Hennecker has both,
Yeah.
and when we were looking at them, we were going to head for water. The big feels, Jack Dearborn pointed out the loss of life, but during the day, when you're down at the highway department, there's a boatload of people. If there's a fire, I guarantee you, they're gonna get them out fast. That's not where the issue is coming in. And if you're talking about a fire at night, there isn't gonna be one person standing down there to get toasted. So I don't really buy the life-saving philosophy here. I do know that Benji has put in the necessary things on the trucks that triggered the fire in Hennecker. We have the suppression law, so the taxpayers have already put the bill for this once. Now, to what extent we're going to go above and beyond that and how much you're going to hedge into what's going to happen, it depends on your philosophy. I happen to be of the game plan that I don't want to add this into it. I think it's unfair to the taxpayers, and, you know, it was screwed up. It should have been handled differently. It wasn't, and we lost time and money, which is what caused the bill to be more costly than what it was. That's not on Benji. That's from when it went out originally, and they wanted people to build it that same year, and was unrealistic, and the result is nobody bid on it. So they had to push it out the following year, and we're really sending it out.
Who prepared this?
CIP?
CIP, Chapter 1.
Thank you.
So, any more discussions on fire suppression until we see Bob and we get some more figures on this?
I'd like to know why it went from 185 when we designed that building, you and I were both on that committee.
Part of the thing is we have a backup generator that's bought for the new building. The suppression system itself is going to require a different backup system. We were originally going to pull from the pond that's behind the highway department. Now we're digging a whole different system. So it's changed 100% from where we were when we went through this
Okay,
before.
so the taxpayers already paid 185 and that 1.36.
I agree.
And now we're trying to hit them with another $250,000.
And they got a wall. So, and the only reason they are getting hit with this was not so we understand this. This is being pushed by the Board of Selectmen because so many people hammered on them that the building was not going to have a suppression system, and it was sold on that. And finally they acknowledged, yes, they sold it on it, but it doesn't have a full suppression system. So now they're trying to appease taxpayers, but they've already taken the taxpayers' money and they want to double hit them. So they don't want to own the mantle, now they want to turn around and say,
They
pass
caused it,
it, so now you eat it. So this is, a whole different way of looking at it.
Can a warrant article specify a transfer from one component of the budget to another? Could you have a warrant article of the form, remove from the school's budget, whatever it is, $100,000, and transfer it to the highway department for?
No, the school budget is totally separate from the town budget, the two never meet.
And even if you could do that, it's a bottom line budgeting, right? So it wouldn't make any difference.
They can do stuff all over the place. Backhoe, anybody have problems with the backhoe? Speak.
No, that should fly through.
What's that?
Tobacco
Seems
should
like a
fly
great
right
deal.
through. It's a good deal.
Well, I had a better one 2 years ago. I had a brand new one for 74 grand.
That was Dennis's now.
Well,
I have an answer to John's question last week, if anybody cares.
What's
He
that?
asked about,
Oh, you.
Yes, go ahead.
he asked about warranty. The warranty starts when you purchase the backhoe. So that was a question.
When you purchase it from the time that the warrant article approves, is that what?
I guess when we sign papers when it comes to towns.
Okay, thank you.
That's not the date you first leased it.
No,
So the warranty would, if it's a 3-year warranty,
We're getting it from when we
we're
signed.
getting it from years 2, 3, 4, and 5, because we already leased it for year 1. No?
It starts when you want it, because that machine has not been transferred from its original owner in our tracks. They offer on a brand new backhoe right now, a 2018 model, they offer a 5-year, 5,000 hour. If the town votes this in, we will get a 5-year, 5,000 hour warranty.
Starting from the time you
Starting
voted
from
it.
the time we signed the
So we're getting a machine that's tried, tested. Benji loves the machine. It's working for everything we need to do. And we're getting it for basically what we 80% of what we put into it already is the down payment.
yeah, and we need one.
And we get the 5-year warranty.
Is that thumbs up?
So have we beaten this up enough? Anybody have any things they don't like? Let's talk about,
Can I ask you a question? You move on so fast.
oh, I'm sorry.
Going back to the fire suppression, I would not support it if it's a water system. The only way I'd support it is if it's a dry chemical system. It's the only way.
And those are more expensive than what we're talking on a water system.
Don't know. Nobody's giving
Ours.
prices on it.
There's no well.
There's no well generator.
Okay, the
There's no
difference,
generator.
no, but with the dry system, when you're going with the dry system that he's talking about, with the chemicals, right? They have to check those
Yeah. it's
every year.
That's
and-
maintenance though.
Yeah, but-
There's upfront costs, is it really more?
Yeah, because when they're doing the maintenance on it is more than with the water, and the chemicals can go bad after X amount of time, so you have to change those out.
That's all fine, that's maintenance. In terms of the upfront investment, is it actually more?
It's not even so much the upfront investment. The reason why water is useless for any kind of petroleum-based fire. Foam suppression system, that'll slow it down, but it does not put it out. The only thing that has its best chance is a dry chem system. Electrical fire, water's not gonna do anything, foam's not gonna do anything, dry chem's gonna have the best chance of doing anything for it. Ricky, one of the selectmen, and I have talked about this at length, and he's of like mind also. If this is water or foam, it shouldn't be in there, because I don't think it's gonna do anything other than slow down.
Well, but that's what the conversation originally started as, was it not? That the whole purpose was to slow it down so that the fire department can respond.
With what water?
But do you know the cost?
That's not good.
No, I've asked for a cost.
They do not have hard fixed cost yet.
They don't
Are
even
you
know.
assuming it's more?
No, I don't know. I don't know. She says she assumes it is, maybe she knows.
When
a bit more
Steve
than I do.
Roberts, who was on
I've
the board
asked
of
for
fire
that
boards,
information,
was doing
and they
this.
haven't given that, and they don't know what kind of system they want to put in there yet.
Yeah.
So until they know, I
I
can't
mean,
vote.
my philosophy is this. First off, they've already spent money on the wall.
I get that.
But secondly, they don't know the costs. They have got no hard costs for anything, and you shouldn't be putting in a warrant article if you don't know what the heck you're doing by this point.
I agree with that.
When we were working on it in the highway garage, Steve Roberts was a firefighter. We worked closely with some of the people in Goffstown. We talked to people of suppression systems. We had hard costs. We knew exactly what it was going to cost. So it's, for them to be bringing forth a warrant article with everything that's danced around this and have no hard costs, I think is extremely foolish, and I just can't trust this. But that's, again, me. I've spent a lot more time involved with it, and I just think it's a bad move. I think we've already taken money from the taxpayers, and if we don't have hard costs and we can't explain it, nobody's got them, and they're not looking at getting them anytime soon. I do not think it's good to have a warrant article for something you don't know, because they'll turn around and say, hey, we screwed up again and we want more money.
So, if I understand what John is saying, putting in a water system is no different from not having a fire suppression system.
It could potentially make it worse.
It'll make it worse.
And
So-
realistically, say you have a under the hood fire, electric fire or fire, whatever, from under the hood of a truck. The hood's closed, what's that water gonna do?
Nothing.
It's not getting on fire. It's gonna cool down, it'll cool down the hood. If it's a oil-based fire and the oil's dripping, now the water's gonna spread it, just like a grease fire. You don't throw water on a grease fire.
So what's the,
Smother it.
what do chemicals do to get under the hood?
It doesn't, that's the thing. But if it's a oil, grease, petroleum-based fire that's on the ground, water is just gonna spread it. Foam, if you're lucky, it'll put it out. If you're lucky, dry chem has the best chance of putting it
So
out.
under the hood, nothing is gonna touch.
Nothing.
Burning oil on the ground, water bad, other things better.
Correct.
Something to keep in mind, either PD and fire do not have a suppression system.
What does the school,
Pardon me?
what does the middle school?
Nor has the middle school that was recently built and it cost so much money.
Wow.
So, you just gotta sit and wonder about some of this stuff. Any other questions on anything?
Did we miss, is there been a change, are they still gonna go for the 49,000 for the tower? You were talking CIP.
Right.
And that's the one I didn't hear.
What tower are we talking about?
49K?
Government building CRF.
It's here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Under fire
I
suppression.
didn't think we talked about that.
We took a lot of this up.
No, we haven't yet.
She's
Oh,
been
there
all over
it
the
is.
place. No, I see.
All the rest of them. I think we got the rest of them. Can someone explain what the $30,000 is, the 35,000 capital reserve fund is at the bottom, and how that relates to the 49,000 for the building CRF,
All right.
capital reserve
The
fund?
30,000 is.
35, above the 30,000.
Oh, it's up there.
I'm not seeing where you're looking yet.
Page 21, fourth line,
Offsetting
fourth
revenue.
figure up from the bottom right-hand column, 35,000.
They apparently have 35,000 sitting in a fund right now.
Well, this looks as though it's an offset for something, because it's under offsetting revenues.
They haven't decided what to offset it against. In terms of warrant articles specifically, they were talking about putting it against.
Is that the 35 they're talking about, either the highway truck or the backhoe?
Yeah.
They got 35K in the capital reserve
For,
Truck on the backhoe.
highway capital reserve.
but not against the 49,000.
No,
Thank you.
no. The background on that was last year, they wanted to get 75,000 to add to the 75,000 they had in the general fund for government buildings and emergencies that they have in buildings. And they wanted to put some of that towards the tower, but it was not defined enough, so they elected this year, because the sense of the voters was no, it's got to be more specific, so they came in specifically for 49,000 to work on the tower of the town hall, recognizing there was a lot of other stuff that needs to be done in the town hall as well, which is not fully defined. They still have 75,000, I believe, in that capital reserve fund, but they want to hold that for other emergencies that could pop up with boilers and whatever else happens in town, and specifically put 49,000 into the town hall.
I have a great reluctance on the Capitol building for this 49,000. We had a set of doors, and Sherry Burdock told them exactly what they needed. The Board of Selectmen did something else. The doors ended up costing us way more money than they should have. The Board of Selectmen, and this is my opinion, but I watch them a lot, are not good stewards of our buildings. They don't know anything about them. I mean, they know historical value, but building is not their wheelhouse. And when it comes to getting costs for things, Naomi is very good about telling them we need to get a cost, but they're having a hard time doing that. And if I knew that my historical society were in charge of overseeing what was going on in the town hall, let's say, I would feel very comfortable giving money.
So if the warrant article said, raise and appropriate $49,660 to repair the spire on the town hall with the approval of the Historical Society,
Or overseeing of this.
whatever, that would be okay.
Yes, but because, I mean, I'm looking at this, these buildings didn't start falling down when I moved here 3 years ago. These buildings, to have the dry rot, the spires being bad, had been doing this for at least 15 to 20 years. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Look, the town hall is our symbol. I don't think we should let it collapse.
I
And if
agree.
they need $50,000 to fix this, I think it gets spent.
The
But
question
I
is,
agree with you,
But-
but I agree with you that it needs to be spent wisely.
Yes,
And I
Exactly
agree with
right.
you that the selectmen's activity with respect to the doors does not give anybody great confidence
exactly.
in their
It's-
ability
I mean,
to use this money.
I like the town hall. I'd like to see it done, but I'm not comfortable with who's driving the bus on it.
No, I'm gonna be the Grinch here and say that I don't see what utility, if any, we get out of the town halls, so.
We use it for a lot of meetings. The historical society's there. Private citizens can use it. We have.
The library uses it, there are several book sales there each year.
We had a big discussion
There are
with
parties.
about an hour ago about how we've got all these schools with lots of room and then we could use
Right,
that.
but people like to use the town halls for every, I mean, that's what New Hampshire
It
is
should be
known
rented
for.
out.
Yes, yes.
There's other uses.
does it generate enough revenue to offset its cost of
I
maintenance?
believe they charge $50.
No, it's
So the
25.
answer is no.
Excuse me, 25. The answer is,
I mean, it's,
a resounding no.
it seems like a money pit, a liability.
So you would want to raise it?
Or sell it off, I mean, maybe someone wants to convert it into a house or something.
My
Well,
feeling
that's a
is,
landmark.
I feel the opposite. I feel that the old town hall
Is a landmark.
character, it comes to a point where you say, it isn't always a penny pinching, well, if we put, it's good money spent after that. It's a structure that I think is going to stay here and be preserved. I think most of the people in town would agree that
Yep.
it's going to be preserved, the money's going to put in.
I encourage people to not be overly penny pinching and support what they want. I just don't like that, my taxes go up every single year, and there's all sorts of other things I'd rather spend my money on than maintaining that building.
I agree, you have a different opinion, that's
I
fine.
like it, it's a landmark. I just think
And
people
there's all sorts of things I like, I spend my money on.
handled it
I think it'd be better, money better spent, working from the ground up, get the foundation secure, because if I remember right, there was a statement made by Ms. Burdick some 6, 8, 10 months ago, that it wasn't the foundation, but the sills or something.
Corner boards.
The corner boards were running out.
I think that's more important than the
So we're going
spires
to-
right now.
If I may, so we're gonna spend $50,000 round number on making a spire or whatever this is up top, beautiful, all level, everything like that, which I agree, should be done, it's a historical value, the town needs a defined center, we don't have one, this is the closest we have. But, once we fix the corner boards, I'm gonna throw off everything up top, always start at the base and work your way up, start at the foundation.
I'll check with Sherry on that.
That's a good idea.
I'd be curious to hear an estimate on the total repairs. I mean, I would certainly understand the argument that, you know, hey, we can get it in tip-top shape from where we are now with just $150,000. But if there was some number I could come up with, where if I said, look, here's the engineering's assessment, it's $30 million. At that point, you'd say, even over the next 30 years, we can't pour that much money to burn it down, right? But maybe the tipping point is in between, and it could be a $3 million project.
Could be. Who knows?
Yeah, well, and so I'm merely saying it would be good to have that data before we
But I-
piecemeal in for a penny and for a penny and for a penny.
I think it's a good idea to check and see from whether you work from the ground up. Because, I mean, the spires will be nice someday, but as you said, they're not doing anything. We have sills, the corner boards need help. Apparently, there's problems with some of the windows.
If the building itself is out of square, because I remember hearing Selectman Clow, if I remember correctly, I'm just gonna say Selectman because I can't remember for sure, mentioned that the windows will need to be addressed in the near future. We're working our way down. If we start repairing the foundation after everything else is already done, everything we've done could potentially go all out of whack and we gotta do it all over again.
Makes sense?
Is it fair to say that there's more questions for the selectmen on this article?
Oh,
Because the selectmen comes for the ground up or whatever, because I think Tom Cole mentioned corner boards perhaps. Some of that work being done out of the 75 kit. Okay. That they have control over.
So,
But I think he was also saying that, if I remember correctly, he was saying that some of the work up top, he was concerned that the cupola had already fallen and the bell tower was at risk. I think he felt if you started from the ground up, you may lose this. But it's better to ask him questions
we're
about.
speculating,
Well,
we need
yeah.
information.
Is he really the person to ask
He's a
that?
representative of the select board.
He
But he
is.
doesn't
He's bringing it
have,
forward. Yeah, but he's,
I know.
who do we go to? We don't go to who we would go to. We gotta go to the selectmen. It's their warrant articles.
I think it'd be better to have that question posed to him in full prior to him coming here, so we can be prepared to answer them, instead of wait till it gets here and then ask him, and then we still gotta wait for an answer, because he may not have one taken yet.
He's a school principal.
So I'd rather, I think it'd be better.
No, I know that. Sherry Burdick is an engineer.
Yeah, not a construction engineer. She's an I think an electrical engineer. If we were to.
You know, if I can, I wasn't finished altogether, no, that's okay. I think we as a group need to come up with the questions regarding this building. Send them to the selectmen prior to this, so they can have the answers, because if we give them here, they're probably not gonna have it, and then we just wasted a week.
I agree with that.
I think that's a good idea.
John, why don't you put some of the points you have to Sherry and have Sherry write the letter to Tom?
Can it come right directly from the finance committee, from us?
I can send it to Lori, and I can send it to every,
She writes on our behalf.
Or
I'm saying, Lori.
if you were in the loop for that, would you do me a favor and ask for a total estimate start to finish, you know, over the next 5 years or 25 years?
Sherry.
Sure. Scope of any.
yeah, not that maybe beyond what we can do here.
It might be.
Yeah.
yeah, they won't have that.
Because I don't think an actual study's been done on the building and actual engineering. No.
If we were to eliminate the three things that there was some sentiment, I don't know, majority, but the $25,000 for the library, the $262,000 for fire suppression, and $60,000 for Bolton Park, that would bring the $1,033,000 down to $687,000, which is roughly $100,000 more than last year.
Getting close.
I mean, bottom line in terms of tax.
Right.
Tax effect.
Any more discussion on anything on the CIP?
As long as you include all that, you want to mention the historical society thing in that too? Suggest that they put that in the warrant article? You want the historical society people to
Oversee?
run the show, don't you?
Yes.
So you might just proceed with
John,
it.
can you send me some of your questions so I get that, and Bill, I'm gonna need.
We need to ask that the historical society will want to take that
I
chance.
know nothing about it, I'm just here, you just have to
Right.
suggest it, I'm just saying. that's
But Bill, I'm
suggestion.
gonna need you to send me the notes before I draft this, and I'll have to run through it with Neil too.
I have another question about unexpended fund balance on the
Sure.
offsetting revenue.
Go ahead.
In 2017, it was 107,000. In 2018, it's 30,000. Is there some reason? Do we understand why these numbers are here?
I honestly can't answer that question.
As the offsetting revenue, what were the two numbers?
Under the line that says
okay.
unexpended
Okay.
fund balance. Usually, we have an unexpended fund balance that the selectmen use to reduce the tax rate, period.
Great.
But I thought they put in a lot more than $107,000 in 2017. Naomi, you know, I don't.
Keep in mind, these numbers are also over a month old too.
That's something I'll ask and we'll need for when we meet with the town, we'll need to know about what they put in. Because I know that they chose not to put in as much to bring the tax rate to flat. They brought it so it was only 2 cents on the dollar increase because they wanted to hold back in case they needed to do something with the warrant articles. Any more questions? Okay, let's go wrestle with some of the handouts. Beth was kind enough to show you the percentage increases for the various departments that have come through. We've got highway, fire, and the new proposed out of the Board of Selectmen. Let's take,
Why don't you do the PD out of the way, that's gonna take longest.
because Benji's here and I'd like to make this quick. And actually, I do not want to put Benji on the spot because I promised that this would be a meeting for us to come up with questions and that we would give the questions to the department heads and when they show up, then they can answer the questions so that they're not put under the gun and they don't have the information. So he's welcome to listen, but I don't want us firing at him and asking because that's not fair. He hasn't had time, so he can hear what we're listening. So let's look at the highway budget. This was presented earlier, and I'd like to hear your thoughts.
How many employees are taking insurance now, or before? $59,000 apparently.
Well, that I'm going to check with the town. Where are you, what line item?
The health insurance line, $59,000, it says more than.
Line item,
Well, it's 210.
okay.
So 398, okay.
Yes, row 398.
Oh,
Okay, so I'll check that out.
And there are other lines that also go with that, but that's the largest.
I've got a question when we're going to talk about that.
Go ahead.
426 in the left-hand column is $10,000 of furniture, desks, tables, and chairs. And
I believe that was explained, that's the one-time purchase for the new highway garage. I remember asking
Yeah,
that question.
I'd still be curious, just having run a small business for 15 years, I probably spent $3,000 over that time on folding tables.
They've got, well, first off, something that you need to know is what they had down there was absolute crap. You wouldn't give it to anybody anywhere at any time.
Oh, dumpster dive stuff,
Oh,
right?
worse than that. And something we have to consider, I mean, when they're there, they get grungy and stuff like that, but these people are plowing,
Mhm,
and they're there around the clock. They need to have some stuff that is comfortable.
mhm.
We need to improve on that. And they have had nothing new
Okay.
in years. The police
This
department.
is all an argument for the virtue of the highway department and.
Right, but the
But
cost.
what I want to hear is just, is this 10 desks at $1,000, or is this
No.
50 chairs are needed and the price is,
It's tables so they can eat,
Mhm.
it's some desks for their offices,
Mhm.
and it's chairs so for office and also for them to be able to sit and comfort when they're
Okay.
down. And one thing about that $10,000, I would be surprised, they may need to spend it all,
Mhm.
but I can honestly say, our highway department has been very good about being frugal and looking for the best deal on the
Okay,
planet.
but that's still speaking to their virtue, and I'm just curious, how many desks, how many tables, and what they cost?
With that, we won't, you can't know until you actually go to surplus and see what they have. We're looking at contracts that the state has, and you look at it and see what you can get.
So they're just establishing a
Yes,
purse from
And
which to buy.
what you could do if, I suppose you could, well, this isn't a budget, so you can't really, it's not like a warrant article, you can't word it. They also have to have lockers.
Okay, I would love to see a wish list, that there are 10 people there, and thus they would like 10 desks, 10 chairs, 10 file cabinets, and 3 couches, something like that. If I can look at it and very quickly say, oh yeah, add that stuff up and it gets 10 ahead. But on the other hand, if you said, 5 desks and 5 chairs, then I'm gonna be left scratching my head saying, even Rich, Miller, I mean,
Anybody else
I
have
runs for
this?
engineers.
Anybody want?
No, but here's the question I have. So if you look at the insurance, the 15 on that, mentioned minus the 15 that's mentioned above, so 44 and that out, plus the 11,000 for the increased salaries, which apparently we voted on. That is a substantial part of the whole increase.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless the insurance is not legit, this seems very reasonable.
I mean, the cost of doing business is, cost of doing business for insurance is not cheap.
Wait, I don't know if it's legit or not, but assuming that it is,
Yeah,
if you look at that and the raises, line number 395, with the comment is full offset raise per town level, which can't go back on. You add all that up, and that's like, what's 59 minus 15, 44 plus 11, 12 is around 56,000, and the total increase for him is 75,000, so like 2/3 of it is
yep.
that.
And what he's got spent so far this year versus what he had approved in his budget shows good management.
Yeah.
But
It's very reasonable.
the only question I got is, house salt. You got low expenditure this year, you got a big buy coming in before the season starts.
I just, ASA room so I can store things in the salt shed, tires and stuff this summer while I was out at highway garage. And again, I knew I was going to,
Yeah, because you got like 160 budget, you only spent 48, but you got a lot more before the
I
end.
don't know how up to date that is, but I
Yeah,
bought some recently,
okay.
and I got more to buy.
Yeah,
Yeah, 2 weeks
so the
ago.
160 is a good, the price of salt is such that you need about what.
A bad year, that's what,
Okay, fair enough.
3,000.
So you're budgeting for a bad year on salt?
You got to every year, otherwise, I mean, really, because you can't forecast that, and it's just too expensive. There's no other line that can make up 1,000 tons of salt.
Now, I want to clear something up. I don't want you asking Benji questions. You can hear the questions, but he is not to be put on the hot seat tonight. That is
Yes,
what he knows. This is not fair, and he's really good about this, but he now knows where your questions are going.
Okay,
so
I
he
didn't
can
think
do
it
it.
was, I didn't think it was I figured he had an answer.
He does, but I don't want to do this to him because I made it very clear that we were not going to take questions from the public, and that can cause a,
I guess then, on the salt sand, I would, based on the 131,015, 140,016, I don't know what it's going to be in 17, but I really wonder whether it's necessary to have that
what
Safety
line
margin.
item are you on?
bottom, 434, bottom line on page 1 of 3.
I think a lot depends on what happens. If we haven't had snow by December, I might say they might play with that line item. If we don't have a blizzard before we hit January 1, if we have a blizzard before then, that.
We get, but the thing is, we can get hit with 3 blizzards in
Yes.
a 2-week period,
Yes.
and just blow all that right out of the water, so.
Yeah, I think,
Just, I mean, looking at the trend, 130, 140. I don't know what it was prior to that.
yeah.
I'm sure the price has gone up on salt. It's not unrealistic.
No, and you'd rather have more than enough than walk around saying we got none.
It's not gonna go bad as far as I know.
No. Any other questions on highway?
Yeah, I did.
Page number?
First page, line 418, line 420. Cutting edges and tires and chains, he's only expended a fraction of what was budgeted.
After this was done out, he started expending, he's been getting new tires and new cutting edges. He had been holding because they've been waiting, and now that we're finally getting closer, he had to start expending money, but he's been waiting for that to get the best deals on time. But he said, when he proposed this initially, he said that he was going to have to start expending and that it had not been expended.
Just want to make sure.
He was planning on using that up, and it's going quickly.
Okay. Line 424, paint stripper supplies, he spent $1,500 this year, but he's only budgeted for $500. Is that going to be a all-the-time increase, and is $500 really going to be enough to cover it?
He knows the question, so he can come up with that when we see him next week.
You'll notice he didn't spend anything in 2016.
Yeah.
Just remember something, if you've got a department manager who's frugal and budgets high for safety reasons, but doesn't spend it, guess what happens? It goes to the unexpected fund balance, and then the selectmen, at their discretion, can use it to reduce the tax rate. So it's not that the money is disappearing, eventually it goes back to the tax rate, but giving him the
Hopefully it goes back to the tax rate.
But that's the selectmen's problem. The point is, if he's frugal and doesn't spend it, having budgeted too much doesn't necessarily mean the tax rate's going to be raised.
I will say that having the new DPW director, things have gotten a lot better over there in terms of spending in general. And I don't have a problem at all with anything in here.
I'm comfortable with the budget. Are we done with highway? You want to wander on to some other exciting place? Okay, let's do fire.
Just got a question, when you say done with highway, are we done with the entire handout, including street lighting, transfer station, sewer?
No, if you want to look at it, there, it's all part of the same.
Yeah, I'm inclined
So,
to
what are you excited
finish
about?
off. Nothing, I just want to give people an opportunity, and then we can truly be done with this piece of paper.
I think sometimes people refer to the DPW as the highway department.
Yeah.
No, it actually has several.
Okay. And that's why I asked, are we done with the entire
Sewer and
piece of paper?
stuff, or are we good to go?
All right.
Okay, let's do fire. Starting with the fire handout.
So you guys,
Thank you. Any questions on fire? And that includes the handout for emergency management and forest fires.
The big one is $299.
Hiring someone?
Yeah.
Or maybe 2 people?
How does that actually go up to
No,
by 50%?
that's supposed to be doing what it's doing last year when we passed the warrant article to extend the hours. That was in part of that warrant article, so this is not a surprise. This is what it's supposed to be.
No, everything else looks small.
Well, he's got a
Where are you?
fire department's 15% increase.
Well, part of that is that was that part, that boosts off the warrant article we passed. That's a large part of that increase.
Could you explain?
When we went to move the full-time hours, let's see, line item, the call force,
It's $299 or $2?
and then we moved fire wages part-time EMT fighters, and we extended their hours. We voted for that in the warrant article, and that's that boost. So that's on us, the taxpayers last
Remind
year.
me of what was done?
We extended the hours, we now have coverage over the weekends.
But we were pulling that out
Also,
of the
later,
ambulance.
later in the day,
Later in the night,
they're also running till 10 p.m. now instead of cutting off at 5. So we have longer EMS hours, EMS and fire coverage now instead of the normal, instead of what used to be
Right.
8 a.m. or 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., but now they're going from,
Out of that ambulance fund.
I think it's still 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. and they're now offering weekend coverage, which is something that's above and
I
beyond.
thought we get that much every year, but
We can
it's
get,
fun.
are these full-time people or are these?
No, they're part-time or per diem.
And how much are they paid?
I can't answer that. It's based most likely on their license level.
So these folks are not getting benefits.
They shouldn't be.
No.
Neil asked something about this the last 2 nights ago at the selectmen's meeting, and I believe the answer was that an average number is something like $18 an hour.
And we are getting,
That's for
Two
the people that are certified.
Per shift
EMS,
usually, yeah.
EMT,
Okay.
full EMT.
so we're getting fully EMT 7 days a week for 2 people,
We've got 4 on.
right?
I don't know specifics.
No, that's what we ask the fire chief when we see him.
But you're saying that the 62,000 minus the 7,700, what that nets out to is what the town voted on last year, basically? And that's substantially most of the increases.
Yeah. Everything else is in the noise compared to that.
Something you should know, when we were doing all this last year.
Excuse me, and that was voted by the town
Yeah,
separately.
yeah,
So this is not on the fire chief.
no,
Well, this is, I don't know who initiated the warrant article. So
He did, but
He did.
the town voted for it.
The town voted for it, and then the offshoot of that is that all the ambulance reimbursement money now goes in for fire apparatus in a capital reserve fund. Instead of 120 or 130,000
So let-
that used to pay for some of the EMT coverage,
who made that decision?
the
the
town
voters,
did.
the voters.
This
There
was
was
the
very
warrant
clear
article.
on the
So-
warrant. You were there.
So let's see if I understand this. We used to have an ambulance fund, and that's probably wrong, money that was paid to us for ambulance service, usually by insurance companies. And that money used to be used to pay for the EMTs.
Well, actually, it went back further, it used to be going to the capital reserve, but then we voted a few years back to start using it, you just described for the Indies.
But not the whole thing, we only took out a percentage.
Okay. And now, as a result of the vote of the town, that money is not being used to subsidize this additional service, but
Correct.
is being used to bulk up the fire department reserve fund for a new ambulance or other
Or
equipment
a new
too.
fire truck in the
Okay.
EMT fund.
So-
Or, and there may be, I don't know if it's going to, but my understanding is there's also going to be an article that would expand the use of that for equipment as well as vehicles.
Yeah.
For example, if you wanted to buy a Choice of Life, it could come out of that capital reserve, but it'd still have to be approved by the voters, but it would be like, it would come out of the,
And it wouldn't raise the tax rate then.
Basically, we stopped paying employees out of the.
The reason was because the.
So now, from the fire department's point of view, it's much easier to get a new fire truck or a new ambulance
Well-
or new equipment because the impact on the tax rate is much less since they have their capital
But they
reserve
made
fund.
that
And
decision.
in the meantime,
The way you
voters,
said that, that's correct.
out of operating expenses, out of their tax dollars, are paying an expense which was originally sold to the town that was going to be paid for by the reimbursement to the ambulance.
You can tell you voted no, but this is how it went down.
I mean,
Before that, I think we actually recommended it.
We recommended it.
We did. I hope I voted no.
That's correct.
that's the way it works.
But I think that the bottom line, the feeling was that it was a recurring cost and it should be built into
Just
the
like
operational budget every year
PD
because they're going to
highway
pay
and
every
the
year,
employees
pay
here.
every year, pay them every year. And that when it comes time 10 years from now to have to buy a fire truck, you didn't want to be saying, well, now we're going to raise $400,000 in one year or more.
That makes sense, except the money that is being paid for the service is also an operating expense, an operating income.
But it's the same for every employee that we pay in this town.
No, he's saying that the money comes in for the ambulance is also basically paying for this ambulance service, so.
Right. Okay,
But it's done, so you can't.
that's a done
change
deal.
it.
Yeah.
Unless he wants to do a petition article, and try to change it.
Anything else you'd like to discuss on this? The ambulance collections is actually up. We're averaging a good 75 to 80% of the collections, so we're doing well. So we're going to see about 120,000, maybe 130,000.
So the new truck is coming soon.
75 to 80% of people paying me for what I did.
I think we're in a business, so we got to realize that it was less than 100%.
Yeah.
We're
That just
getting
is.
we're getting 80% of what we
Bill for it.
what we bill for. We bill everybody,
Yes,
but some don't have insurance or whatever. So
some
we
just
get,
plain don't want to pay.
and that 80%.
Some pass away before the bill arrives, et cetera.
They're rude.
I mean, when you're pre-selecting for people that have been in an ambulance, they're not the best.
That's true.
Also, you cannot collect from somebody who's deceased.
Yeah,
We
I
transport
think that was
somebody
his
who's-
point.
yes.
So
But you could fix that at the State House.
it's 80, we're getting in $80,000 roughly?
80%. So we're
How
getting
many
in
dollars
roughly
is it?
120 to 130,000 this year.
I see. So this $185,000 that's hitting the taxpayer could be reduced to $60,000. If that money,
What line are you talking about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I'm on line 299,
Of,
fire department.
Okay.
$185,607 for part-time EMT firefighter wages.
It could be reduced, the fund could be used for that, which it can no longer be used.
Yeah, we're relitigating last year's
We
politics.
changed the,
We can't change that. The other thing you have to take into
Fine.
consideration is your usage for all of this. Usage goes up and down. Right now, we seem to be at a premium with a lot of drug issues and heart attacks. So, and we're having a lot of car accidents. So our usage is more elevated. If your governor gets a grip on the opioid crisis, perhaps that'll decrease because we won't have as many drug overdoses.
That would decrease our income, but not our expenses.
Correct.
185 is fixed.
Just a point of correction, a good chunk of the opioid overdoses are usually signed off, not transported to the hospital, and there's no money collected.
They are signed off? What does that mean?
Basically means we would go, we would administer Narcan, wake them up, make them alive again, and then they say they don't want to go to the hospital. We can't force them because at that point it's called kidnapping, we walk away, and we've administered drugs, we've spent time there, and we do not get, and EMS system does not get reimbursed.
So you can only bill for transportation, not for other
Correct.
services?
No, you can bill for other services
Okay.
if you transport. If you don't transport, we don't.
Right. And I presume anyone getting Narcan is
You
probably
don't
having a lot of
agree.
funds anyway.
We have funds to buy.
Oh.
Why?
They allocate
Why
different
can't
funds.
you bill
Can we
for
move on?
administering our?
They do not
That's
have
something we
access.
discussed now, John.
Yeah, this doesn't
Yes.
affect
That's,
us.
I apologize.
that's something that
You
we as
digress.
EMS have gone to the state about, and it's on you
Just
guys
like-
now.
Okay.
Okay, what else do we want to look at in fire?
I thought we finished with fire.
I just wanted to make sure, did you look at emergency management and forest
So that's
fire?
the next.
there's essentially no change there.
and they're very small numbers.
Yeah, I mean, unless-
The only difference is what we already approved. for
Unless something's
town
over
clerk.
$10,000, it's not gonna work. well.
Okay, let's go to my
It's
favorite,
not worth the 60 seconds.
Animal control.
police department. Well, let's take animal control. We're gonna, animal control, we no longer have an animal control officer.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
it
it
looks like
should be lower than they are.
They're going to start looking for one in January. It will be working less hours than our previous one
For more money.
for more money. And
Why?
why what?
Why are we paying more and why are we getting more hours of service?
Less hours of
15 deal.
service. You're getting less hours of service.
Is that an average or is that gonna be capped? Because I know the previous ACO worked probably a lot more than.
She worked all the time. She took dogs home. Everybody knew her in town. I have no idea. This is on our police chief and the board of selectmen.
In 2017, we spent, this is line 512.
Yep.
Roughly $12,000 for wages of the animal
That
control
was the
officer.
budget, no.
That was the budget, we spent 19,
I'm sorry?
That's the budget.
We spent 19.
Yeah, we spent 19, why?
Why what?
Why did we go over budget by 70%?
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of weird issues last year. There was a plethora of people's cows getting loose in the middle of the night and animal control gets called. We had horses.
Two of them ended up on my farm.
Yeah. And we had people's horses getting out and she was out a lot taking care of things.
And unlike the ambulance situation, the farmer whose cows get out is not responsible?
That's correct, they're not.
Somebody's got to handle the animal until you find out who the animal belongs to.
I understand.
The
That
farmers
person gets a
goes
bill?
home to know that
No.
it left the dell. And know they don't get a bill.
Nowadays, most towns don't even have an ACO anymore.
So why do we?
Because
The
we're a
officers
good
just end up
town and we're
transporting
more
them
rural, so we
to,
still
uh,
think
The
that.
officers, which officers?
The police officer on duty
Sure.
will transport the animal, if it's small enough to fit in the vehicle, to the vet hospital.
Where the vet charges the owner the
Yes.
fee?
Mhm.
That sounds reasonable.
That sounds better.
I don't.
And what about the cows and horses which don't fit in our small police cars?
So the cops sit there and corral them and look funny on TV.
Well, the cops don't even go around. Our
And you're
current cops
probably
are
paying
not
them
gonna
more
do
per
that.
hour.
I find it funny that we're just waving past $45,000 on aesthetic upgrades to the town hall, and we're losing our
Wrestling with
minds
animal
over
control.
$9,000 to deal with a cow in the middle of the road.
I
I
agree.
think you mischaracterize the town hall repair. It's
That
not.
was poorly.
Well, I think,
I got your point though.
The overall choice to have a town hall is an aesthetic and cultural decision,
Let's not go back.
as opposed to a cow in the middle
and
of the road.
we are a town
This is
that has
recurring, that's what
animals,
it's
that's, we're a rural town, so we need to remember, we have farms, we have breeders, and they too are taxpayers and their animals and livestock are precious to them.
Who controls who makes the decision as to whether the animal control officer does something?
The animal control officer.
It's not the police chief, it's not the selectman.
Well, the ACO reports to the police.
What do you mean does something? Are you mean?
My understanding is, having called the animal control officer a couple of times for a rogue cow on my property, she's at home watching TV, answers her phone, turns off the TV, and then makes something happen. So, I mean, I guess she could say, I'm sorry, I built 22 hours this week trying to get on Monday. But it's, and I'm not defending this, I'm just explaining how it works. The answer is, she gets off the couch and makes something happen.
Yeah. She doesn't have set hours where she's patrolling all day, she's on call, if there's a problem, she goes and charges around. What the new one's going to
The
do.
former ACO had a passion for this, and that helped the town substantially.
Yeah,
Because
because she would take people's dogs home instead of throwing them in the cages down at the highway department where they were cold and wouldn't be safe and they wouldn't have food or water. She took them home and kept them in her barn, in her stall. If you called her, she came out any time of the night, any time of the day. If you had a problem with a neighbor's animal or the cows were out, she wasn't afraid to handle anything, transport anything,
what
and care
happened to
for
her?
it.
She's no longer with us.
She's no longer there.
Did she burn out, or were there personnel type problems?
I don't think that's for us to
That's
discuss.
not for us to discuss.
But the point is, she's not willing to continue.
I don't
That's
think
not
that's-
for us to discuss.
She's not continuing.
I think that would fall under a,
Let me
Time to
put
go out for dinner.
I think that would fall under a non-public session, because now we're talking about specific people.
Yeah.
Let me talk then just about the numbers. In 15, we spent $12,000. In 16, it was 17. In 17, it was $12,000.
No, 17 was
No,
19.
I'm sorry, the budget was $12,000, and we're spending 19. So, since the selectmen are able to cover the difference between the 12,000 that was approved and the amount that was expended, why don't we do the same thing? Why doesn't this get cut down to $12,000? And if in fact this year Travis calls too many times about errant cows, the selectmen will transfer the money from some other line in the budget.
I support
It's
that.
not how you budget though, right?
That isn't how you do it, but it does for them.
Yeah, but this is unpredictable.
Let me rephrase Neil's point. In 2015, $12,000 got the job done. why, it's 24 months later, why is $12,000 not a plausible figure?
Well, I can tell you why. We had a lot of people's cows getting out of their fences, and the reason I can tell you that is I know the people who had the cows that get out, I know the people who had the horses.
But how about this? You introducing a suggestion when Tom's here? We can't write the budget, but when he comes in,
Yeah,
we
he
say,
can tackle it when he tackles the budget. Are we done with animal control? Because I think if you want to look at the police budget, animal control is the least part of our problem in the police budget.
I'm done.
This is the budget the Board of Selectmen have decided to go with.
This is the 17% increase?
Yes.
Okay.
They gave him a very generous contract this year despite the amount of input from the public. He is still working part-time. If you compare that to what our fire chief is getting, one does wonder. The fire chief has more people, and yet, look at what he's getting.
Is he 50% time, 75% time?
They're both capped at
Limited
32 hours.
capped at 32.
Just trying to figure out what works out to an annual rate.
A lot.
This appears to include a new officer, but didn't we say that the 3 new officers were going to be on a separate warrant article?
They're supposed to be.
Well, this includes at least,
This
I guess one of them.
Could you show me where that is? Matt?
Second line, it's row number 224, there's an increase of $68,000. That's gotta be an extra officer, right?
I do not jump to that conclusion.
That could be the contractual
Exactly.
raise.
That's the contract.
10%?
well, you haven't gotten, the truth of these expenses to date, you've got to compare it back to the 549, right?
So it's more than 10%
More
increase.
than 10%,
Yeah.
The budget is 549. They're proposing to raise it to 617,
Right.
which is
So we need to ask
$68,000.
what
So that's
what
not
is
just
this?
raises.
There's something else that we don't
The
get.
raises was, what did we agree to, 3 or 3.5%?
Yeah.
It was 3, 3.5, 3.5 or something.
Right, so this is way higher than that, so what is this?
My expectation, no, from the approved budget, no, that's a good point, good point,
Yeah,
no.
so this doesn't, this isn't the
What?
comp.
The expenses to date reflect some of the positions are really filled, and that's why it's less than everyone overtime.
Didn't his budget include unfilled positions?
Mhm.
So too, I didn't think he could have.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
Why
the
it's
budget,
budget
for
unfilled
unfilled
positions.
positions. The approved budget last year, we included, that's apples to apples.
Okay.
Approved budget, approved, not expenditures, but approved budget.
Yeah.
Expenditures is down because it's so much.
So we need a breakdown of the 68,000 because
Yeah.
it's not making any sense. We have a police full-time secretary. And then if you notice, we have a line for a part-time secretary. He had to have a part-time secretary. Do you notice, this is line 226. To date, we have no expenses because we've never hired one, and yet now he's doubled that line.
Yeah, so
Why don't we zero that out?
I think that's a great idea,
Of course, we can't zero it out, but.
but it's something that,
Ask the selectmen to.
this makes no sense.
Once
Uh,
again, if there were a separate warrant article that passed that said the amount of money appropriated for police part-time secretary is 0, that position cannot be created or filled. No money
Yeah,
can be
but
spent
see,
on it.
the problem with this, Neil, and you've been at this longer than I have in your town, but this line item has been in here, so it's not a warrant article unless you can turn it into a warrant article to get
You
rid
can
of it.
convert anything you want into a warrant article.
Okay, then maybe we ought to do that because this is getting ridiculous. Every time you turn around, he wants another warm body. And, here
It's
we,
a lot of money.
well, yeah, and what you
Well,
gotta love is, okay, he didn't expend any money this year on it, but where did that 6,500 go?
I'm sure he spent it.
He found someplace to go with it. Police
Over budget.
education incentive. We went away with that and we've gone somewhere else with it.
He's not over budget.
No, I'm sorry, you're right.
Health insurance, buyouts, police overtime. We're expecting that to be decreased. It'd be nice if he actually did some patrol.
I have an issue
Why
with
should it be
231.
decreased?
I have an issue with line 231.
Go ahead.
Why? Well,
Why?
Just, 2 weeks ago at the selectmen's meeting, I brought this up, it was listed at 21,000, all of a sudden it's doubled again.
I have no idea if let me see, I'm looking at your line, what did you say?
Line 231, when I asked about this, I remember specifically asking the chief, why
What
would
is it?
What is it? Yeah.
part-time?
Part-time.
I can read the word.
Part-time off wages?
Part-time officer.
Off, okay.
Approved budget was 10,500, we've expended 0 this year. On 2 weeks ago at the selectmen's meeting during the chief's presentation, as a finance committee member, I had the opportunity to ask questions. It was at 21,000. I believe Ms. Rouse had specified that it was 21,000 was for
Yeah.
the wages for a.
And now
for a
it's
full
doubled
year.
to 42,000.
Now it's doubled for 42,000 with no explanation on the reason for increase or decrease. All of a sudden, are we now budgeting for 2 part-time officers?
Why don't we budget this at 10,500?
I think we ought to drop it down to 0.
Why do it 0 if he hasn't used it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you,
We can't fill the full-time positions. Part-time officer isn't gonna help.
right, and we have
Why not,
2
Joe?
full-time positions we don't have filled, and we have 2 part-time positions that aren't filled. So I don't understand, as you said, because I've got the budget the chief presented, and you said 21,000, and we're at 42,000. Every time you turn around with his line items, and you're gonna see it going through the budget, everything either
Well, I
doubles.
can't say that the chief increased this from
No.
this.
I'm hoping this is a typo, but this shouldn't be,
I don't know.
unless,
I'd like to see under reason for increase or decrease, at least 224 and 231. I haven't looked through all the rest of them.
Yeah.
let me make this point.
sure,
On police overtime line, 230, we appropriated $100,000, he spent 144.
right,
He's only asking for 100,000.
Yep.
But if you add the 42,000 for part-time to the 100,000 for overtime,
Yeah.
guess what? You get 142,000, which is very close to 144,000. So basically, these two lines are interchangeable because he will simply take the $42,000 in this line and ask the selectmen to put it into the overtime line so he could provide whatever.
That's not transparency to me.
no. I
So
agree.
this needs to be either zeroed or put out at $1, so that if they need somebody, they can transfer money from some other line in the police department or some other budget to fill it. But this really is,
It's playing with money.
$1 is more than enough.
Okay, Annie, what's our next line item that's hot?
Are they really buying one computer and one tablet every year?
EPM is what they buy. According to our chief, we always need new things. Nothing's ever good enough.
But I mean, that
Well,
equipment doesn't die.
There are things that do wear out though. And technology,
I'd be curious how many computers total. If there's 10, then 1 a year is quite reasonable. If there's 2, then it's unreasonable.
What
the
line
under
of
cruisers,
256.
That's not what they're talking about, though. This isn't the cruiser like that.
Can we go through this in order?
Yes, let's stick it there, go down the line item.
236,
Full-time officers.
this is for retirement system for full-time officers. Does that amount of money include, is it for only the officers we have now? Is it for the 12 that in theory we could have? Or is it for 13 or 14 officers?
Okay, when he proposed, for the proposal of new officers, this line item read $253,377, so it does not include the 3 possible warrant article people. It does not.
So you think the $26,000 increase is simply due to rate increases?
And I think it's supposed to be for the 12, unless the Board of Selectmen lowered it until they're hired. But at the moment, we have nobody coming down the pike.
Does the 12 full-time officers include the chief?
Yes,
no,
yeah,
He's
he's
part-time.
part-time.
oh, he's part-time.
So if in fact
Then we're down 3.
we have 9 officers
Yep.
or 10 officers and do not hire them during the year, there's money in this line to
Yes.
transfer to, guess what? Overtime.
Lots of places to.
I think this needs to be looked at. Unless the chief is able to tell us that he has in the pipeline X number of officers.
When you say pipeline, what does that mean?
That means they're in the academy, he's in the process of
We
hiring.
don't have anybody in the academy right now, they're looking at 2 possibles just to start maybe looking into the process.
One right now is in the background. They're in the,
Oh, their background
they're in the
check.
background check, they're in one of the final phases of going to the selectmen to be approved to be hired.
They've been to the academy? No.
No,
this
academy is
is
after they
still-
get hired.
So,
For new uncertified officers, I should specify.
so he's got 2 possible hires.
One,
One,
and 2
The other
that
one-
we're just,
The other one just washed out not too long ago.
okay, 1 possible
we have
hire.
2 more that are,
And there are how many officers of the 12, of the 11, that are actually on staff?
9, I believe.
9. So there are 2 vacancies, and we're budgeting for 11 officers, and all the accompanying roll-ups, social security, retirement, and so forth. If in fact we only have 9 throughout the year, if the second one washes out, then that extra money would be available to the police department to go into any other line,
right, now.
without affecting any other budget.
Right, but last year we did something, and the board, we talked with them when the town came through and we talked about this. They actually did take out of the budget, they knew nobody was coming down the pipe or going into anything. So the first 3 months, we did not have that line fully loaded, and the board of selectmen took it out of the budget.
So they only budgeted for 9 months.
Last year, correct.
One of the questions I brought up to the chief during his presentation to the selectmen, he was asking for 3 people, I think it was. They only have 3 academies per year now. They reduced that from 4.
3 academies per year, is that 3 people grad?
No, they have 3 police academies.
Okay.
So, 3 police academy sessions,
Okay.
per year. Out of that, there's only spots for 67 people statewide. So that means a total of, what, just under 200 if my whole math's correct?
So if everybody's scrambling for police officers, we can't get them all through in 1 year.
Which means we're funding it for no reason.
Right.
That's my concern, is
The training line is going up too.
One of the things that we could consider to the suggesting to the selectmen is that we budget for 9. Or budget for 9 for half the year and for 10 for
The
half the year.
concern with that, and I agree with the chief on this one, is, and I'm one of these people, I want 24-hour police coverage in this town. And the only way we're gonna get that contractually at this point is to have 2 additional people. Because
11 plus 2 or 9 plus
11 plus 2, so a total of 13 people.
2? I don't want 24-hour coverage because I live in the town of Weare, which is one of the safest towns in one of the safest states in the United States. Let's not over-police ourselves when we don't need it.
Well, considering last year.
We need a lot of police protection for domestic violence and various other things that happen during the normal whatever hours they are.
Domestic violence doesn't have.
Fine, you know, then
Well, we're gonna have our own opinion on that, on 24 coverage, either way. But the townspeople as a majority, I believe, from things I've heard, want 24/7 coverage like other towns do. That being the case, by contract, because the contract, I believe their contract states they have 2 officers on at any given time. In order to make that work 40 hours a week with time off and all that stuff, 13 officers.
fine, and people of this town will have the opportunity to do that by special warrant article.
Yep.
Okay, so that issue is not before us.
Right.
But my concern is we're not gonna get there this year, just on the lottery of getting an officer here that'll pass through the background and the polygraph and all that stuff, times 3, and then get them into the academy.
Right, so that's Neil's point, so why budget for more than we can possibly
That's
spend?
right.
That's what he's saying, and I agree.
Yeah.
But I still think we need to get, I still want to more
But you
employees involved.
that's not what's on the table here. We are going to be bringing, when the police chief comes, I have requested, and Greg also came up with it, but I do it every year. I'm going to have a complete breakdown of all the calls they go on, time of day, so we will know how many rapes, how many domestics, how many DUIs,
But separate from all that, I think what Neil's suggesting is why not budget for what they can realistically expect,
Yes.
as opposed to over budgeting.
I agree,
Whether they want 24-hour
Yeah,
government.
everyone agrees with
I
that.
agree, that's absolutely correct.
In best case, in my opinion, that's one additional officer, if they can do it.
Well,
So in other words, budget for, well, they can't get that guy. When, assuming that he doesn't flame out, when could he be hired?
He could be hired as,
In December.
could be hired, yeah, could be hired in
And
December.
when is the first academy?
January, but who knows if it's full, I don't have that information. It could be full already, he may have to wait 3-4 months before the next academy happens.
They're 4 months long. So
And
they-
during the academy, he's paid his salary.
I don't have that information.
I'm almost sure he is, because he's a town employee.
yes,
Could be.
And do we budget in the, is there a budget line here for academy?
no,
I think it's just,
Isn't there a charge for that?
I'm sure there is, but I don't think it
Isn't that
comes
under
in
training?
training, it doesn't come under academy.
no, I think that's just regular full-time salary at that point.
No, what Neil is asking,
No,
does
we
the
have to
academy
pay the
itself not
academy
want a
incentive.
tuition check?
The academy doesn't take him for free.
It may. I don't, does anybody know why we only had police training? Well, I'm just kidding.
We'll get, stay in line, Neil, you want me to start in line, we're staying in line. Okay, so we got some questions on that. How do we feel about, we're happy with evidence to collect prosecutor services?
Why did it go down? He budgets low and spends high. He budgets one amount and spends more than twice that amount.
What's on you on here?
I'm on,
Prosecutor
238.
service.
does anybody know anything about, I'm not objecting to what he's doing, but does anybody know why?
Well, if you look at 239, he does the same thing. He budgeted for prosecutor services 61,000, we spent 41,000, now he's proposing 78,000.
Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
a new
Per
prosecutor.
contract.
That's not the
And
opposite
we-
thing.
I believe that's a new prosecutor in general.
Okay,
Comments
so
says per contract, right?
What, we have a contract with a prosecutor,
Yeah,
and we pay them a fixed amount?
apparently
Or
so.
we pay them by the hour? We don't know.
Apparently, our police chief has signed a contract.
I think it's the selectmen signed that
Yeah, I
contract.
don't think he's allowed to sign.
So we're getting a part-time prosecutor for 78,000?
I don't know whether he's part-time or what he is.
Does anybody know what
Weren't
the
we
double
using, we were using Goffstown's prosecutor, right?
No, we had our own.
We have our own.
He was an attorney, he was on salary for
Just so everybody knows, almost all of these contracts are subject to voter appropriation. So if we don't
Apparently,
appropriate,
it's not because it's a done deal.
no, just because you have a contract, I assume when the selectmen enter into a contract, they enter into a contract and put in a little clause saying, we only have to pay you if the town appropriates the money.
I'm pretty sure they don't.
They do it anyway.
Who does it anyway?
The town would pay the contract anyway, it's just that they wouldn't necessarily have it in the budget if you don't approve the budget.
That's fine, they'll find it from the police department overtime.
There's so much slush in this.
Okay,
Could
police.
you ask the police chief to explain this contract to us?
Oh, happy to.
Do we know why we have a new contract instead of continuing to use the prosecutor we were using?
Yeah, he didn't want to work for us because we didn't want to, he wanted to make a whole new line for a police prosecutor who was a cop and a prosecutor, and we didn't roll with that. Our
The
philosophy
old
was,
prosecutor wanted us to do that.
no, chief did.
Okay, so the chief made the decision to stop using the old prosecutor and use the new one.
Well, the old prosecutor didn't want to, couldn't, the number of hours, whatever, that was severed, they were done, he was done with them. As far as I know, I could be wrong.
So the old prosecutor's contract was up and we had to get a new prosecutor and we.
Yeah, because initially, last year, he wanted to add yet another police person to.
He who? The police
The
chief or the
police
prosecutor?
chief came to us, and he wanted another officer, it came to the Board of Selectmen.
Mhm.
And he wanted an officer that would also do police stuff and prosecute, and that didn't,
In many towns, don't the officers prosecute their own cases?
no.
Smaller ones do.
If it's like a speed or something like
I
that.
don't think they can do felonies.
Yeah, so it's
No.
prosecutors.
So, wait a second, the county attorney does felonies, so we shouldn't be paying somebody to do his business.
No. Like in Manchester District Court, they have a couple of officers, one of whom had been in law school and graduated from law school, but they were actually the two police prosecutors. That was their main job, and the officers would still have to come in and
Testify as a witness.
present that case as a witness, but the main crux of the case preparation, the best shot at getting the result that you desired was to have those people that could do that. In this case here, we only got 9 officers, they're not legally trained. And to have somebody who has the legal training to get the desired result is why you go with a contract.
And they have to do a lot of bookwork and backwork on stuff that.
Then it keeps you 9 officers, so all they gotta do is maybe appear and testify one day, but it still takes time off the street, but it takes less time off the street than it would be if they were trying to fumble their way through to take the whole case.
So if the DA's doing felonies, these are for what, misdemeanor prosecution?
Yeah, misdemeanor, yeah, like Manchester District Court versus Hillsborough Superior Court,
Right.
That's 2 different. You get the county prosecutors, and then for the stuff in Manchester District Court, policing.
So I'm deeply ignorant, so what sort of thing might happen in where? So if a murder is committed, then the DA is going to prosecute that? Okay.
Drugs, petty theft, it could go on and on.
Vandalism, minor theft.
Assault, DUI,
Okay, all right.
Disorderly conduct,
Cool.
But stuff other
We need
than
to
traffic.
watch cops more often.
It could be more than just
I've
traffic.
not had a TV since
You need to
1991.
get one.
No, I don't.
Okay, police telephone. If you look at the other 2 budgets we've looked at, nobody's jacking their increases up by 5%, and yet our police department is.
No, it went down.
And, he budgeted 16,000, he spent 12, and now we're going to 15. I don't understand why we aren't increasing more.
Yeah.
That's a low.
Well, first of all, he's been spending 14,000 in 15 and 16, the year is not over, so that 12,000 may very well go up.
Most likely it will, but keep in mind, that's probably also budgeted for additional officers too.
Yeah, so that needs to come down.
Why?
Why?
If he's budgeting for 12 officers or 13 officers,
So you're saying over budget in 17?
Yeah,
yeah,
Okay.
And he's further over budgeting in 18,
I don't
on
know.
top of
It's a lower number. What am I missing?
because it's not low enough.
Okay, but it is a lower number, right?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
not
it.
enough.
We're on telephone, is that right?
Correct. Police dispatch, that's,
is that a contract we have?
yeah, that's with
Somewhere?
Goffstown. We shifted from Bo to Goffstown. That is what it is.
So they're raising the price and he's reflecting it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's other
But let's make sure that's the case, that he's gotten the
I don't
bill.
know if we're under a long-term contract or if we're under a yearly contract.
We're not yearly, we're longer than a year, because they did it a year or so ago, because they got out of Bo. That was more expensive than this.
So can you ask the chief if the figure is an actual figure, or is he just estimating an increase?
Well, when he comes in 2 weeks, you can ask the chief.
You should
We don't,
give him that.
well, I thought you said you wanted to give these guys advance
Yeah,
notice.
yeah, I do. Police recruitment,
What line is that?
we're just below
242.
dispatch.
Just for clarification, are we gonna go down line by line, just to make it simple?
Yes, that way we're not hopping around and going, where is this? And if we don't have a problem.
What do they spend money for in recruitment? Do we advertise?
Yeah,
Yeah, I believe, I'm not sure where though. I've heard Facebook, I've heard rumors of that.
That doesn't cost money, does it?
Yes,
Yeah.
so everything costs money.
to be sponsored, to get a sponsored post,
Yeah.
so you up at the top, yeah, it costs money.
Serious money?
I don't know how much, but I know it does cost. But I also believe their recruitment is also sending out letters and flyers and such to colleges and going after the people who are graduating from criminal law and things like that.
Having done some advertising, I'd love to abolish the police department, but this is $500 a month, and that's quite plausible for a small business sized thing.
Okay.
Police accreditation,
How about 0?
Yeah.
this is Kalia, is this Kalia?
Yes, believe.
And
Which the idea behind it is that we can hire people more easily for CALIA
But you know,
I'm pretty much convinced that if we got rid of the CALIA requirement, we could get rid of the part-time people.
Why?
Because there's a lot of work being done by officers and by the secretary that is CALIA related.
Yes.
And if we didn't have CALIA, that's additional workload that these officers could actually be doing.
Wasn't that CALIA thing part of the way to avoid these
No.
lawsuits we've been?
no. What CALIA did is we had hiring processes in place. All we've done with the change with Sean, as far as that goes, is we now have a firm that does the background checks outside from our police department.
It gave us a set of policies.
And they gave us a set of policies,
That's not
we write
related to the
this.
whole
But
lawsuit.
the amount, what CALIA does, once you've got the policies in place, you know, you need to write this, you need to do that. The amount of paperwork CALIA generates that you don't need is astronomical. It's like, you know, instead of learning 2 + 2 is 4, you're now going, let's see, the 1 looks like a pretzel, and the 2 looks like a banana, and.
But does that mean policies over time get out of whack?
No, the town I used to live in had CALIA. We busted our tails to get CALIA accreditation. 2 years out, we were done. Goffstown had it, is out. It becomes a bigger pain in the neck. It's very expensive, and
So why don't we ask the chief what additional expenses beyond, I assume this is for dues.
I asked the chief what addition, when I was running for another office
you
in
did.
town, I asked the chief, face to face, what addition, how many hours per week are spent on CALIA related activities? And I did not get an answer that I liked.
Why don't we ask that question?
okay, keep in mind, he's also the CALIA
That's great.
all over the United States.
I'm delighted to
And
hear
his
that.
contract allows him to go do that.
That's right, you can do that, but we don't have to be members. But let's find out, let's get the answer to John's question.
What is the exact question?
How many hours?
How many man hours are spent per week or per month? I'll settle for any metric at this point on CALIA related activities. To include reports, site visits, conferences,
Not the chief's
conference
time.
calls. No, include the chief's time, because that's time we're paying for. We're paying for him to be on these CALIA related conference calls, when he could be actually doing chief related stuff, not CALIA related stuff.
I thought his contract allows him to do national CALIA type work.
Yeah,
When he's working for CALIA, but when he's on the clock for Weare, he's still doing CALIA related stuff because
He's doing Weare CALIA stuff.
he's doing Weare CALIA stuff, which can easily translate into nationwide CALIA stuff.
Okay.
will you send me a much larger blurb on that, please? It doesn't fit in my little lines.
Yep. Very smaller.
Paper skinny.
244, safety complex. That's electricity.
Something to understand, and I broke this down, I was curious. The deal is police pays for electric, fire pays for heat. So, fire pays roughly $8,300 for the heat for the year, and PD usually incurs an expense of $10,000. And I wanted to know what that was.
Why is he dropping his electrical costs from 12.5 to 10?
Maybe
Because he's only spent $800 this year, so.
maybe some bits of firefighter structuring off lights when they leave.
If we look back to 2016, 1250, it was over 12,000, so it's sort of
Low
interesting.
efficiency bulbs, or high efficiency bulbs.
Did they do any lighting upgrades or energy efficient? It doesn't really matter, I mean, it's dropped.
Maybe they're learning to turn off
It
lights.
says it drops, but the comment says averaging plus 5%, so the comment doesn't fit with the budget requirements, but that's okay, it's because it's less.
Okay, building maintenance,
No problem.
see line two, well, no, you gotta see line 274, what's the deal with 274? I know, but that line says see line 274.
One-time purchase, $16,000, fenced yard and locker.
We got a question on that, we consider that far ahead already?
Well, no, because it's attached to the previous one.
Okay, so what's the fence yard?
They want to use that for a
secured, unsecured impound lot for larger things that they can't secure inside a building.
The whole outside parking lot is gonna be secured?
I don't know how big they want to put it.
What are they trying to put in there?
OHRVs, bicycles, things like that, for evidence collection, but,
Can't they rent a storage locker? We've got enough storage space in this town. Couldn't you just rent
We've
one?
got the town hall.
I mean, we've got it. Going down the road, that'd be cheap, it's locked, it's done, it's got a fence around it.
problem is, if somebody else owns it, from an evidence collection standpoint, they can get access to it at any given time they want.
So here's a question, what have they done over the last couple of years?
Yeah.
Have a bicycle or something?
I believe that was asked and answered at the last selectmen's meeting, or 2 weeks ago, and it was something along the lines of they're using other towns.
Keep on using other towns.
The larger items, and that would be like, if it was in the last, for DWI, it was an accident resulting in something, they impounded the vehicle or in a felony case or assaults and things like that, or a drug case, they're going to impound the vehicle as evidence.
Well, I'm just, we're using other towns and
Oh, we're in that.
Yeah, but are we paying for that?
I don't
How
know.
secure is our evidence
We
of
need
that?
more information, and then the question is how big, where's he planning to put it, because this is shared
I believe
space.
the selectmen had another idea, and I thought it was a wonderful idea. The building that they're currently using for the temporary highway garage,
Yes,
they're toying with the idea of converting that into cold storage and giving a portion of that as secured storage for PD,
that would be great.
which would eliminate this $16,000. But that question should be a selectman question, not.
Could you explain that? I would look at all 16,000.
Well, we
Yeah,
own the place where the highway garage is heading out till it's all built up. And once they come out of it, they're thinking of turning that into, you know,
Is that building that was electrically hazardous?
Right, this is like a death trap.
Well,
Wanna save-
they want to spend a whole bunch of money, the town spent a whole bunch of money converting it to make it safe.
Yeah,
And why do we build a garage?
it's not big enough,
Not
and it
big
doesn't
enough.
have all the stuff we need. But we needed to have a place that
But
was.
we own it,
Jesus.
it's now a safe building, it's already on our books.
And it's not in the way of the new building?
No, no, it's not in
No, it's not
the.
even, it's around North Stark somewhere, I'm not sure exactly where.
Oh, this is not the old highway.
Power repair place in there, I can't think of the name of it.
Is that up near,
It's across
Just
the
before Reservoir Drive.
Reservoir Drive.
okay, that's the one that we're left,
One left.
just past the bookstore.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's it.
exactly.
Okay, so we need to ask the selectmen about
It's
this.
a town facility?
It is now.
Yes.
They took it for taxes.
It's not, right now, it's a highway garage.
Moving on to line 247, training. $7,000 increase because grants are no longer available. Does anyone know what the training is?
Well, he claims that the state no longer provides grants for them to do training. It's,
Is this required by Kalia?
But could this be the
Chief?
academy? The academy in there?
no, this is other training that he sends people to.
I think there's a question as to what exactly and does this really help us in some way? And the answer might be yes, that, you know, if they aren't trained in how to take fingerprints, then it's inadmissible evidence, you know, and
Well-
that would be a coherent answer. If on the other hand, it's how to become a more excellent officer, that might be not.
Well, you know, what's interesting is last year I did ask that question, and I said, what trainings do you have planned for officers and when are they taking them? And he said, well, we don't really know, we have to see when they're advertised. But the state has,
This isn't just state though, there's other trainings that are put on by different entities.
right, but you never get a concrete answer on anything. It's very vague.
It's just like with the fire service, we don't know when a training pops up until a month or two before it happens.
But do you know the varieties of training that might exist, that we've got a guy who's waiting to get CPR level 3?
Oh, sure, there's always gonna be, but that's recurring training, and that may be covered under this budget also, but, there's specialized trainings that happen, like triangle rescue and things like that pop up once in a great while, and when they do, you take advantage of them.
I'd still be interested in hearing, for example, what have they done over the last 2 years, what might they hope to do in the next 2?
Yeah,
And, you know, maybe we hear that and say, oh, that makes a lot of sense to us, or maybe we say, that sounds like a fun weekend boondoggle or something.
Moving on to 251.
I want to know what's going on, well, I'm on 248. Police printing, budget is 1,200, he's at 9475, so he's budgeting 1,200.
Good point.
What are we doing?
Why did it drop so drastically? Is
Yeah.
a better question, went from 2,200 to $95.
Yeah, using less
Save a lot of paper.
Is that printing part of the copier contract they have?
I don't know, or is it printing that we had done on the cruisers? I don't know what this is for.
So we need to know.
And just for my clarification, when the
Sure.
police chief asks, why are you nickel and diming me since this is the bottom line budget and the selectmen are going to put in the numbers that they want, what is our response?
We need to know to make good recommendations and explanations to our
And
fellow
negotiate with the
taxpayers.
selectmen for a reduction in the bottom line. Thank you.
Police dues, that's whatever they belong to or he belongs to. Mileage reimbursement. I don't even want to discuss that.
They got way over.
That's
I
fine.
think that was when they were down the cruises. I think the police chief was using a private vehicle for work to home, and they had a
He was driving his pickup there for a while.
They had to reimburse him a mileage rate because it's in his contract.
So why is it going up?
It's not, is it?
It's not,
No,
no,
it's
it's
staying.
staying at 200 because he got 3 new cruises last year, and it gives him more flexibility with it.
Police boiler. We don't know of any problems with the boiler, but he added 5%.
No, he didn't add 5%, he added 27%.
According to this, it says in the little.
Those numbers are all wrong.
Okay,
The 5% is meaningless.
Okay.
I don't know why it's in there.
okay. So do we think this is reasonable?
I think
It's-
5%.
Yeah, I agree, 5, not 27%.
But there may be contractual, not a maintenance cost
But
may have gone up, but you need to find out.
Why wouldn't that come under government maintenance fund?
Well, and everything else does, why isn't that, why not?
Government maintenance?
Yeah,
The government building maintenance fund.
No, but that's for repairs. This is an operating expense.
Why?
You have to service the boiler.
Why is that not maintenance and repair in general for the government? The city, the town-wide.
You're not repairing anything. It's like having,
Maintenance.
it's like having an oil
The
change.
maintenance part of the maintenance repair.
Yeah,
The government building and maintenance fund
it's for maintaining stuff.
that the selectmen run is for maintaining and repairing.
So they pay janitors out of that fund?
I don't know what they pay out of.
No, it's coming up as clean. She says later.
But the question is why do we have a maintenance service specifically for this boiler instead of under the town government building and maintenance fund?
Ask. Same thing with rubbish removal. It's a big increase.
Hang on, I'm still writing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who he goes to, I know what I pay to have my trash picked up and.
I know another town nearby, she's familiar with. The transfer station
Picks it up.
employees will go around to the different town places and pick up the trash. Why can't we do that? We're paying them.
If we could do it with the same number of employees, the same number of hours.
They do that, they only have one full-time employee in that town. Everybody else is part-time.
But
They split it.
But understand that if the guys we have who are already doing work in the transfer station are fully engaged, in other words,
Do they have a vehicle they can go pick stuff up with?
No.
The town truck.
dump truck.
One of the trucks that Benji needs to go,
The town has a one-ton plow truck that probably has a dump body on it. They're sure about that.
can the transfer station employees handle that?
We're not setting the rubbish policy.
Okay. Cleaning services. Again, I know, well, I don't know if this is actually 5% or not. Amelia, you're better with the numbers than I
It
am.
is.
The question is, we don't know that the rates are going up, but again, everything just goes up because he thinks, but we don't know.
So let's
So
ask.
padded.
Although it's
Just
way more
add
than
that
what it
in.
expends, what it expended.
I mean, I would suggest that a negotiating position could be, you know, everywhere you said plus 5%, we're looking at the CPI and we're changing it to plus 2%, as a debating stance, you know.
Yeah.
I realize we can't change this budget.
Cleaning supplies, I like this. We budgeted 8,000, we've expended 14,000, so we're proposing 8,500. My God.
Should ask her not.
What they're saying, I think what he's saying is 17 was aberration,
Yeah.
Okay.
and that's fine.
Body cameras.
I don't agree with this one.
Now,
At least the definition on the right.
Yeah,
The
yes,
reason-
it should be included
Yeah,
in this
he's-
warrant article as part of the outfitting for the three new officers.
yeah.
Definitely.
The other thing is, he doesn't have any facts or figures when he puts anything out. All he keeps saying is that, things wear out, so we need this. But you have no concrete, this broke, this is what it costs to fix, now we don't have that. So we want this checked, you want a definition on this, what do you want?
On page 255?
Yeah,
Not a clarification.
255 gets deleted and
Shouldn't be the
incorporated in the warrant.
Or
article.
call it the warrant article for any new officers, or their outfit. It's like outfitting in the cruisers.
Yeah.
In the warrant.
The same thing we're doing with the, or we hope we're doing with the money for the retirement system. You can't put money in the retirement system for the 3 new officers in the budget, it's gotta be part of the warrant article.
now, I don't know, I'm confused on this next one, the police computer equipment, one station, one tablet annually. They don't have real old computers up there. I would like to know what status they are at, because
This is for the 3 new officers, right?
I don't know, Neil, to be perfectly
They
honest.
each get a computer?
I would guess it's a arbitrary number he throws in there.
Because in all honesty, my husband uses computers, he lives with his computer, and their companies can get them dirt cheap, they get top of the line, and they don't cost this, and you do not have to swap out computers every year.
I think that, I agree, not every year. It is plausible in the same way that we've got cruisers on a 5-year cycle. I can imagine a desktop machine on a
But I
5-year
don't
cycle.
know what we have.
And- And so the question I would ask is merely, how many computers and tablets do you have? And I would then, if I were making the budget, divide by 5 for a 5-year cycle, price them out, and if you've got 10 computers and 10 laptops, then you need 2 a year, and that's, $900.
It's not 2,800 though.
Right.
Yeah, because we went through this with the schools, you can buy this stuff dirt cheap, this is ridiculous. Furniture. What do they need more furniture for?
Oh, now you're on the anti-furniture jog.
Well, I've been up there, they have desks, they have beautiful desks that they've gotten,
Mm-hmm.
and they have chairs, they have a table, he's got a setup that looks like it came from a bank.
I agree with you, I was just teasing.
I know, but I'm
This is
saying,
for the new officers.
I don't know who it's for, but this needs, no.
They seem to spend a lot every year on furniture.
It says equipment furniture, I don't know what the definition of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not this equipment.
it's not guns or anything, they've got stuff up there. And believe me, I go up there to check on this stuff so that, by the time we roll in here, I know what my departments are doing. Office supplies,
That doesn't seem like a 5% increase to me.
No.
The 5% increases, that number is consistent,
oh yeah.
and it's wrong, and so just
When he
ignore
came
it.
in and did his budget in September, he just did a flat 5% on everything. He did not do any justification, he just rolled with this.
Yeah, 5% would be
33%.
6,300, not 78.
Yeah.
5% of 6,000 is added 300.
Police, IMC, service maintenance, I'm guessing those are computers?
No idea.
That's the, yes, it's computer related software, so the police officers, while on the road and in the station, can actually do their background checks and all that stuff. It's needed.
This is not for the body worn cameras.
This is
Not
not the
yet.
body worn cameras, no.
But is 5% reasonable?
It's contractual.
There is no
This
5%.
should be under a contract when you're doing this stuff, isn't it?
This is also quite surprising. It has been steady at 8, 9, and last year was a spike to 15,000.
I believe that was because of the upgrade that was required.
That's
The
right.
Because of the
software.
new cruisers with new computers in them.
Either that or Goffstown, the dispatch.
So we'll ask explanation. I think dispatch comes under its own line, but we'll see. Photocopier service,
Actual contract
costs.
Yeah, so,
Ooh, this one is an actual cost, the rest were just,
Fake.
postage. Isn't most stuff done by computer?
Does anybody know anything about photocopier costs? I mean, it's $3,000.
yeah, why are they spending so
$700,
much?
a lot of money. My copier cost me, I don't know,
Well, the question on
$150.
this
I think
depends.
it's a maintenance contract, that probably includes toner and things like that, we need clarification
Well,
on.
with all of that kind of stuff, I mean,
How much
you get 5 or 10 pieces of my,
Yeah.
and mine is just a,
Yeah, but yours also gets a lot less use than those guys do,
Yeah.
probably.
so buy one a year. It's still cheaper than this.
Okay, then you spend $10,000 for a copier.
Because you gotta remember, they're photocopying a lot of
They're doing,
stuff
a lot of their stuff is color,
right to know
which
laws.
is a lot more expensive.
Why do they have that color?
I'll look for the photos,
Yeah,
What photo?
evidence photos.
evidence photos. When they go to court, they have to have that stuff. Police storage shed, why aren't we just zeroing this darn thing out and take it away, get rid of this line?
Because they still have a shed.
He did.
We do, where?
This is zeroing out the storage shed.
Right across the way from the Sally Port, the police station.
You talking about line 262?
Yeah.
See, there's a dash,
Oh,
it's gone.
it's gone, okay. Fuel. They have changed the fuel to $2.10 a gallon, which I'm delighted to see.
It's still an increase.
Well, it should, I mean, they did this across the board, they figured we were at what did they say this past week? Was it 204, 205, and they bumped it up to 210, so they figured that out this week, and they're very comfortable with it. His initial, just so you get a handle on some of this,
Something's not right.
Yeah, 205 to 210 doesn't make $2,500 increase.
well, hang on a second, what line are we on?
You're still on fuel.
263. Fuel vehicles.
263.
If you went up 5 cents out of $2, that's not $2,500.
Okay,
Maybe they changed the gallons?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Probably
he
so.
initially budgeted 19,542. They brought it down to 16,380. And he estimated, when I ran the numbers on that, it came out to like $2.69 a gallon, which is not what it is. They went through this, and the calculations that were done actually make sense. Now, how this comes out, as far as you're saying this doesn't make sense, give me some
Well,
numbers.
the question I would ask them is this reflecting increased use in case he gets 3 new officers and has increased patrolling, and he's added that into a 1,700 gallon usage?
No, my statement as to why this doesn't make sense is these new cruisers are more fuel efficient than a Crown Vic.
Yeah, there you go.
That's my,
Yeah.
Probably they intend to be driving them more since they have less miles on them.
The rumor has it that since we took possession of the new cars, that since we've had them, what, 3 months? Roughly
first
speaking?
one went in service in July.
Okay, they're already at,
July, October, and late November.
yeah, apparently we're already running at 10,000 miles.
10,000 miles per,
The oldest one, the
Okay.
oldest one. The one that went in service in July, I think is around 10,000.
okay, so that's 25,000 a year or something? I have no idea
No,
what.
it's probably closer to 35 or 40.
Okay.
And they want to hold it for 5 years, so we're going to get up to like 150,000 miles.
No problem, they're built for that.
Okay. But they
Okay,
come to us in wine when they get over 100,000.
I know.
I've got a question with the 267 communication equipment.
I haven't gotten there
What
yet.
about vehicle maintenance? Shouldn't they be going down?
Vehicle maintenance, repairs, tires, yeah, that was the interesting thing, that was brought up by Tom Clow, and that was, when they got cruisers last year, the line was supposed to be reduced, and it was when we took possession of the cruisers, and his question was, we would need to do the same deal this year if we get new cruisers, because the maintenance should come down. But initially, it stayed the same. They have not changed it from what he applied for the budget, and he jacked it up. Last year, his budget was
Only
20,000, and he bumped it up, even though we have new cruisers on, and that should be coming down.
Okay.
So this is like, what are you doing here?
I remember bringing this up at the selectmen's meeting and
Yes, you
asking the
did.
chief about this one, and his response was the majority of this $23,000 is spent on the Crown Victorias that are no longer in our fleet, they've been sold.
So why are
So,
we having this?
We have
backup?
these 3 brand new cruisers are under warranty. This should be, in my opinion, no more than $10,000 for maintenance.
Maybe he meant to subtract 5,000, just
No,
added it back.
there aren't lines for subtracting.
Because we still do we have 2 Crown Victorias and a Taurus still in the fleet that are aging.
Yeah,
$10,000 should cover that plus the
We don't have the Explorer anymore?
Explorer.
well, it's been
No, that's
gone
not-
for a long time.
Explorer. You mean the Expedition?
Expedition.
Expedition got sold, went to auction.
Or the Explorer?
Explorer became the fire chief.
Oh, no, the Explorer's still there.
Oh,
Yep, the Explorer's still there, I'm sorry, yes, I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
But that should be substantially less.
books and updates. I'm confused. John, when he went through this, I don't know if you asked him or
What's
not,
in the noise?
I don't remember asking about books or
but he
updates.
asks for 550, he spent 84, and we're back to asking for 550.
Yeah, I think
I think
the
that's a
highest
big
we've ever
number.
seen is 208 back in 2016, so 250 seems like more than enough.
Police communication maintenance, that got zeroed out. Police communication equipment for proposal new officers, this should be warrant article.
Wait a
Does
second,
it say new officers?
is this replacing an existing radio on a rotation basis?
That's the implication from the comment.
I know they do have a lot of radio-related issues.
Which one are we on?
267.
Where are you?
Well, because mine is saying, it says proposal of 3 new officers, so
Oh.
this
Are you looking at the wrong sheet?
I've got 2 sheets that I'm matching up to, yeah, okay, yeah,
We're reading off a sheet that's dated 11/29.
yep.
Okay.
So this is taking the 3 out, which is good.
And
But-
what replacing one radio a year is not uncommon, and price-wise, that's about right.
The 4.4Ks?
Yep.
Really? Okay.
Digital radios are very expensive.
All right.
Granted, our radio system is not digital, you cannot get an analog-only radio, so that sounds about right.
268, replace 3 tasers, ammo targets. I have issues with this line.
Yeah, I'd like to see a breakdown on that.
He wants a taser for everybody, and one of the best armed departments in the area is Goffstown. Goffstown does not have tasers for every officer.
But there are officers.
What?
But there are a lot of officers.
That's true, but when they're on patrol, not everybody's loose with one.
Well, even how many do we have, there's talk about having 2, 3 people on call, not on call, on duty at any given time. So if we've got 8 or 9 or 10 officers running around,
We don't need 9.
right, that's my point, that 2 or 3,
And he
with a
wants
spare
one
4.
for
Right.
every
I'm agreeing with
person.
you, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
The other thing
It's
is,
like a patrol car, right, it's shared resources.
Each have their own taser.
because I know for a fact,
But these are replacing 3 tasers, and my question is are these actually worn out, or do they have an expiration on them?
that I don't know, but I
Let's
do
find
know.
out before we just go and crucify them for
There's an
saying that they just want
like
3 new tasers.
how fast.
Right,
Let's find out if there's an actual
and
need.
if there are new ones built in here that we don't know about.
Mhm.
Okay, we go over to the back page. Oh, they zeroed out,
Shouldn't we zero out 269?
yeah.
What is juvenile diversion?
What is that?
In general, diversion means you are on a path towards prosecution and jail, but we are taking on another path that isn't going to create that record. So I'm presuming by putting the word juvenile in front of it, it's taking the 13-year-old who is caught with a can of spray paint and doing something that means he...
Community service.
Yeah, right.
They spent $40 last year.
Why is it 1,500?
You know the real answer, so it can go into the overtime slush fund.
Okay, 270, uniforms and equipment. Is this a contract
Well, this
requirement?
is interesting because it's the same amount as it was when he proposed it, and when he proposed it, it was for 3 new officers. So I want to know why this line is not reduced, because if we're not getting the 3 new officers, then the cost should not be the same.
Mm-hmm.
ballistic vests.
Bulletproof vests, right?
Yes.
But it says replace 3 due to expire.
Fire just break down.
There's a 5-year life
Body
expectancy.
sweat, heat, things like that, they actually,
And that's called expiring?
they have an expiration on them.
When you perspire, you expire.
No. John's saying something else.
Slowly.
He says there's an expiration date.
Yes.
She's cumulative.
She was joking.
Got another 50 years.
In other words, they're not safe after 5 years.
Okay,
Are we on 77?
Why didn't you replace them this year? Because presumably they didn't expire, right?
Correct.
I would say that's probably a safe assumption.
Why are there 2 lines for uniforms? What's a uniform allowance?
Allowance.
Oh, there's the
not
union
money
contract,
for
okay.
employees to expense something.
yeah, the uniforms.
And that doesn't fall under officer uniforms?
No,
I'm guessing it's the difference between things that the department buys and hangs up in the shared locker or something, I don't know.
Union contract, maybe the coats or things like that.
Yeah.
Leather, who knows.
Does that provide the cleaning for the uniforms?
That's a separate one.
It's going up 50%. Well, I guess that's out of our control. It's really per the CBA.
okay, 274, one-time purchase.
That's the fence
I
yard
already
lawn.
talked about that one.
I thought we were gonna delete that.
Beautiful.
This is sent to selectmen.
Yeah.
Where are they gonna put this locker room that they want to put?
They're gonna blow it into the fire department somewhere.
I thought they got mixed, okay.
No,
I think they
act-
did too, I think that's what they're talking about.
no,
They're gonna put it outside the building?
they can't blow into the fire department. They have a community area, and how that's, there's a possibility that area will be split, but they are not getting the whole area.
That weight room?
Why do they need a locker room?
Well, they want a locker room for guys and girls, and they don't want to share with fire, because while fire is good enough to save their lives, I guess, this is what I can figure out, the police are vetted out to be police. Fire doesn't go through those background checks, and I think they're uncomfortable.
I don't think fire has locker rooms.
Yes, they do, because they
They
have
have-
showers they have a
They have
shower.
showers, yeah, but they don't have lockers.
No, because their gear goes with them everywhere they go.
Their
They
gear-
have
their
two
gear-
areas
last time I
to
knew their
shower,
gear
one for
stayed
that,
out
one for
in
the
the fire apparatus.
Yeah. But they want, their big problem is they have these weird looking teeny tiny lockers, and they want more room for their lockers because they've got all their guns and stuff. But I
Where do
don't
they
know what-
change now? I mean,
In a locker room, the girl goes into the bathroom and they have a bigger locker room. But if she's in the bathroom, then they can't get in there and shower, and that seems to be a problem. But they want bigger lockers because they want to have a change of clothes, and they want to be able to secure their arms, which I asked, why can't they secure it in their armory where they normally keep stuff?
And a bigger locker, you could buy that for $1,200 and put it up against a wall in a hallway or something, that's different.
They
from a
don't
full
have
locker room.
any hallways with that kind of space.
Okay.
I think
How about in
John
the
will
community
back
room?
on that. What?
Put the lockers against the walls in the community room.
There isn't enough wall space for the lockers,
In the community room?
the community room.
There's an inside wall there that has all
That
sorts
big
of,
room,
the big room,
right,
right?
room, huge room. Go in the police station, go left a little hallway, and another door, it's right there, the big room.
You mean the fire station, on the fire side?
No.
No,
police
where you
side.
go in and they have the refrigerator and the cooking stove and that kind of stuff, the community, correct?
On the break room.
I'm in the big rooms, the shirt rooms, yeah.
It's where they hold their celebrations.
Yeah, that's their break
Kid,
room.
the Christmas party was there.
Yeah,
That's on the fire side.
no,
just on the
there's
police side.
another
We're not
room.
talking about big conference room then.
Yes.
They don't have a big conference room.
If you walk into the police
You
station,
know where the kitchen
You-
sink is and the stove is and the
That's,
refrigerator?
I know what you're talking about, but I
That's
think
what they're talking about.
Really? That's not that big.
it's gotta be 15 by 30.
You're talking on the fire side. You walk in the main entrance, you got police on this side, you got fire on this side. Are you talking taking a left here, go towards fire?
I go into the door
You go
near
in
the
the last
road.
double doors.
Yeah,
On my right is bulletproof glass, and the secretary usually sits there
Yep.
for police business.
Yep.
right.
I go straight, I hit a wall.
Yep.
I take a left turn.
Now you're in fire department, that's why. That's where you're thinking. That's
I
a
see.
fire department
Yeah,
training
I know.
and the emergency management area.
I thought that was police, but
No,
okay,
that's all fire.
got it.
I got a question, why can't they come in the gear, clothing, whatever else they need to do their job when they come to work, like in the real world?
Would guess that sometimes, like most of us, sometimes we have to change clothes when we work at our real jobs to go someplace else afterwards, or we're coming from someplace else. If you're coming home, if you have a late night shift, or, you know, you've got the 7 to 2
Don't
shift.
you have to leave their uniforms there for cleaning?
I'm sorry?
I don't have that many change, but I've done it in jobs and I use the bathroom. Takes me 4 minutes.
But don't they have to leave their uniforms there for cleaning?
Yeah, there is dry cleaning on
There's
the.
this whole cleaning salon here,
Yeah.
assuming their uniforms stay there.
But still, normal people change
They
the
may
bathroom.
take it out to get dry cleaned, I don't know.
Who? Individual officers?
The officers may take them out to get dry cleaned.
Do the exact details on this matter to the
Budget.
overall cost?
Would it make any difference if we found out what proportion of the 16,000 is for the fenced yard and what proportion is for the locker room? Because if we were talking about doing the fenced yard in some other building, not doing the fenced yard at the police department, then we'd have a better idea of what they're talking about just for the locker room.
I think that's a good question to
Yeah.
ask.
I think it's a good question.
It's gonna be a two-part question, because we have to figure out if the selectmen are even gonna entertain that idea of using the current temporary highway garage for.
My
cold
guess
storage.
is when I start asking these questions, or we start asking these questions, I don't think a lot of definitive answers are made yet.
And they won't be.
Okay, police uniform maintenance dry clean.
Is this by contract?
No.
Now, notice that they say plus 5%, but in fact, it's
I tried to explain, somebody
plus
has
100.
put in plus 5%
What?
as some sort of code. It
Yep.
has nothing to do.
The entire point of that
So
was
what's the percentage of increase on this?
120% or so. We're up from 3K to 7K.
So what, they're
My
gonna be
guess
extra
is,
dirty
my
this year?
guess is the additional officers.
Oh, so they shouldn't be putting this in here either.
Well, no, they took how much they spent in 15 and 16. They spent
They did.
5,000 and 6,500.
Good evening, everybody.
Okay.
I gotta be well free.
Police, safety, and medical.
Good night, John.
For a while.
Yeah.
They budgeted in 2015, 2016, they budgeted 999.7, and they spent 2,000, so, no.
No. They've never spent anywhere
Yeah,
close
so
to
it's
it.
a
So why
1,000
are we
is more than
still at
enough.
2,000?
Good question.
Because we don't trim the fat out of their budget.
Yeah.
So what do you think should be in here, just out of curiosity?
900, 1,000?
Yeah, something like 1,000.
For what?
For $90?
No, look at the years
Look
before
at
that.
2016, we spent 997.
Neil, we are looking at
Got it.
278.
Yeah, but year-to-date's 90.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
But I mean,
Right?
there's 1 year variations up and down. You have to throw the noise out and look at the
From
trend.
1,000 to 900, to $90. Big variation.
It's gonna spend a lot in December for Santa Claus.
Have you kept track of all this, what we think should be out of here now? Did you get
No,
those?
and we haven't made enough decisions to make it
No,
worthwhile.
I just wondered if off the top you figured what percentage we have issues with.
But on that, my
No idea.
suggestion, especially with the police, that you are prepared to do it, because I don't think what's going, Sean's gonna be dealing with all of us, and we're gonna want to do.
Yep, yep,
The only
but that's the reason I wanted this tonight, so that we knew where we
Right,
were
no, I
going.
get that, but I'm saying, I think we should agree that you be the one to go through. If you're really gonna do it line by line with them, which is gonna piss them off, I'm sure. But if you're gonna do it, I think you need to do it, so not all yelling.
Yeah, well, because I explained to him that the 13th was for him and nobody else is coming, and I knew that we would have questions. So I figured, I told him that we were doing our run through tonight, and that I would give him a heads up of what we're going to be looking for, because we can't make good recommendations and good decisions. We're going to try and give more information to the voters as to how we get to where we're going. And in order to do that, we need answers, and we don't have answers.
That's good, I think as a.
So I really appreciate everybody going through this and taking the time tonight.
Let's just hope that it's a very light week for police work, because he has a cap of 32 hours. And Miss Laurie over here can take 30 of those easily, just with this issue.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you guys have all added,
No, you know what I'm saying.
yeah.
This could be very time consuming for the chief.
Which is why we need to let her do it,
Yeah.
and not be shining here.
Yep.
So what I would like from you tonight, or going forward before he hits on the 13th, if you would please in the next couple days, run through these again and shoot me the questions you would like. I made notes, but I guarantee you I missed some. So any help you can give me on this so I'm a little more thorough and more accurate, I would greatly appreciate.
So which one's which is going to come up? Next week, really?
Next week is highway and fire. Now, in regards to fire, Bob will tell you about what water suppression can do. He is not in charge of analyzing the system for the highway garage. Do not put that on him. That is not his choice.
Well, here's the problem though, with that. That's exactly what I was trying to get to, because I did talk to him, and he was like, well, water suppression being totally sufficient. You guys are saying, look, it's totally different.
That's it, thank you so much.
It sounds like the basis of your argument against the whole thing.
Does anyone know if there's a highway garage that has the chemical stuff that John is talking about?
Henniker has both.
Have campfire and, water and chemical?
Yes.
So would they not be in a position to give us an idea of what it costs to put in the chemical? I assume it's different from
Built
fire.
there with their buildings, so they're not.
Yeah, they're two separate systems, and we did get the cost originally. I don't have the papers anymore, but we ran through it in one of our meetings.
So is the selectman coming in next week too?
They can come and listen, but it's strictly, again,
Well, but the reason I said is the fire suppression is really a selectman issue, not a highway department issue.
then I would hold this off until the Board of Selectmen come see us. I don't know where, and I have to ask Naomi when the Board of Selectmen are gonna be ready to present.
So don't talk about that next week.
So no, I would not put that, that's not on either Benji or them. This was brought forward by the Board of Selectmen. As far as the library goes, I don't know how you want to handle that. Do you want to have him, you've already heard him at the CIP, do you need him again?
You talk about the 25,000, you talk about the operating budget.
Well, the 25,000.
We don't control the operating budget.
Do you need to see Parks and Rec for anything regarding Golden Field or Chase Park?
No.
Okay, so when the Board of Selectmen are ready to come in, I want to do them as a separate meeting because I think we're going to have a lot of questions. After what we went through tonight, I would guess we're going to have questions. And in that meeting, I want everybody to participate. We have to wait till each person finishes their sentence and their thought because we did really great tonight. But I want to make sure that everybody has full input in it for the Board of Selectmen, because we all think differently, and Neil catches things that I don't think of, Keith thinks of other things. Each one of us has the ability to come up with something that the rest of us didn't think of, and it's important when we have that interchange that we all weigh in. And the only other thing I want to stress is make sure you're going to your school meetings or your town meetings. That's a must right now.
I'm gonna be here on the 13th, you're gonna go to the meeting. We'll split.
Has anybody, this is the one I haven't been at, the middle school had a meeting, yes? What happened?
She presented the initial proposed budget.
Up by what percent?
I couldn't tell you the up by what percent, but I can tell you what they're doing here, and what it appears they're doing is, so they put, as a for instance, we have 3 older retiring faculty members. So of course that drives down the budget. So in their proposed budget, they account for that negative number, that subtraction. And they made it look like the proposed budget is going to be, kind of not too far off of the current budget. And what they're going to do, of course, is jack up the default budget, so it's going to be just like last year. Is my guess.
So
They won't get the negative things. They won't subtract out the.
if we subtract out in the default budget all of the savings from older teacher retirements,
Right.
what does that come to?
Off the top of my head, I'd say around $300,000 to $500,000. Not just the teachers, but other things as well that they were taking out.
So this is a huge increase. Their expenses are going down.
I'm talking about pretty big budgets, not huge increase.
They're not a huge increase.
But I think what Neil is saying is theoretically it should go down by $500,000, and yet they're gonna come in flat or up 4%.
Right, so they're raising the budget by,
Like they always do, yes, yeah. That's the game they play.
I have a question. How old is Centerwoods?
oh, was 2007, 2008?
No.
The
Oh,
the
no,
grades
no,
are-
no.
Wasn't that the
Oh,
oldest
90s.
building on the planet?
Oh, I'm sorry, Centerwood, yes, I was thinking the middle.
The high school was built in 85, the year I built in the town, they babysit every night I was up in Florida.
Center was early 90s, maybe.
So it came after the high school?
Yes.
Yes, and then the Weare was the newest.
Okay, okay. We've been to the meeting with the high school and with Zach and the energy people. Theoretically, if they go forward on the energy efficiency program, it is supposed to be a zero impact to the tax dollar, assuming they get grants and everything else, so they have to still flush that out.
I thought the energy efficiency thing really was very profitable for the energy efficiency company,
No,
but
it's
it's not
not.
very profitable for the,
Well, it depends on what you're dealing with.
Well, hang on a second. So I know the same thing she did, and it's not what,
it's not that.
it's not.
Oh,
This is basically just like the school has to replace their oil tanks. And if they're doing that, they have to replace the lines, or they should.
Yeah, that's required by
but that's not
DEP.
energy efficiency, is
Hang
it?
on, that's my point, exactly, you're right. And they also need to replace the boilers. So in the process of doing that, they're trying to decide, okay, we just replace them as what they are, or we look at a propane system, or we look at a wood/propane system. And on top of that, they then throw in some energy efficiency stuff with lighting and that kind of stuff. But basically just a whole bunch of stuff piled in that they then spread the cost over time. And they do get some, if they go to a wood system, they get larger, rebates is the wrong word,
So,
subsidies, thank you. So it's really just as near as I can tell, it's a traditional capital project that they're trying to decide the most effective way to budget for. And then when she talks about zero impact, that's because there is going to be a payback in the decreased expenditures over time. And then you're bonding it out over a period of time, and this is all up in the air in terms of how long you're bonded for, what's the energy,
And if they get all the grants,
and
theoretically,
what grants do they get exactly.
they have been very,
in other words, without the grants, it makes no sense.
No, not necessarily, just determine what the payback is.
I mean, if they took it out 20 years without a grant, or 20 to 25 years without grants, it would be closer to maybe 2 to 3%. I don't know what the costs are yet. We don't know the costs. If they get every grant they're looking for, it won't cost us anything. If you don't get the grants, you're talking money. And they are being great, and I think Keith will acknowledge that. They understand that the taxpayers cannot take on more of this debt. They get it. They write up
They are taking on debt, but they're trying to do it such a way as to avoid
killing the taxpayers.
The tax impact. yes.
Yeah, they're really trying very hard to not have to raise the taxes for this particular project.
And this project is at the high
High
school?
school.
Well, no, it's all three schools.
No.
This current one is this high school.
Yes.
But to be honest, so you know, Centerwoods is coming up for oil tanks next year.
Following year.
Yeah.
And I don't know who built the middle schools, but they have problems. So that's on deck, but this is all being driven by the SAU.
I don't think so. I think this one is being driven by.
They brought this originally to the table because every school that's involved with the SAU is hearing about this.
That was the system that Neil was talking about, that I was actually envisioning as well.
The Siemens thing.
Before this meeting with you, which was this more global kind of thing.
Yes.
I don't know, what I heard was not that. I heard it was a more of a straightforward capital
Yes.
improvement project. And how do we fund it over time, and how do we get some energy efficiency benefits out of it?
And I can be honest, I was in every nook and cranny office, I was up on the roof. They've got problems with stuff up on the roof, they've got problems in a lot of places.
High school.
Yes, yes. Whoever did the re-outfitting several years ago when they put the addition on, it was not done well. I don't know who oversaw it, I don't know anything about that, but it was not done well, it did not mesh well, so they have problems.
Well, we did it all to save money when we did it, that's.
Okay, I don't know, wasn't here, wasn't there. But this group, I will say, they have been outstanding answering questions, show us anything, they've been great.
Yeah, I think until we see the final numbers, that'll really be the proof.
As far as the contracts go, I don't know anything about the contracts, we've got 2 coming up, and I don't know if you've heard anything.
They're done, I'm sure they have negotiated in the middle school, I don't know, high school. Have they negotiated the Peaches contract earlier? Yeah.
Don't know.
They're not.
I do know that the school, the high school, does believe that if they don't have the need for the teacher, they will let it go, let that person go. Whereas last year we were wrestling with, we didn't have as many special needs issues in the Weare schools, and they did not want to let go of a special ed teacher because they fit so well. And what if we get some more people 2 years down the road, we would like to keep this teacher, and we explained that it was a business. The two operate very differently.
None of that go with that. The high school has an advantage in that, although it's changed now, recently their population has declined, so they can make themselves look really good
Yeah.
by proposing a budget that was lower than last year's budget, but not as low as it should have been on a per student cost basis. So they have different situations to work in.
So that's, as far as I know, unless you guys have something else to add to any of that. On the town side,
When we meet with the selectmen,
yes.
since we've already met with the different departments, what is there to add? I mean, are we just taking the information we got from the departments?
I think
and putting it
after
to
we
the
meet the
selectmen?
departments, we will probably do a final run through if there's anything else we want to look at the board of selectmen and say.
Well, there's also CIP stuff, especially in particular the fire suppression system. I did this like one.
Yeah, but part of it too, is you said you wanted, if we have things that we're not happy with, and we're not going to roll with something or approve it, so to speak, or endorse it, or however you define what it is we do, recommend it, and we tell them this is where we're going, and this is why, we are giving them a very clear opportunity to adjust.
Okay, another question. There's apparently 2 different ways of dealing with the default budget when it comes to an item in the operating budget that's lower in the proposed operating budget than it was last year. So let's assume for 17 we spent $1,000 on something, and the selectmen are proposing to take it down in 18 to $700.
Okay.
Sometimes the selectmen have included the $1,000 in the default budget, because that's the amount that was appropriated in the prior budget, and sometimes they put the $700 in the default budget.
What is the correct way? What does the RSA say?
Legally, I think they're entitled to put the amount, the $1,000.
Okay.
But the schools have also done this, and they said, hey, if we're lowering the operating budget, we should be lowering the default budget, because we don't need that
But
much money.
technically, the default budget is supposed to be whatever you budgeted for, approved to budget last year, plus the contracts or.
Plus anything that's contracted, minus anything that was a one-time
So
expense.
technically, you're right, you shouldn't be finished figuring.
But I just,
fussing with those
I'm just
numbers.
wondering if there's going to be some sort of uniformity in the school district policies and the selectmen's policies. Is this something we should bring up? Just raising the question.
Well, it's something I can certainly ask at the next board of selectmen meeting.
Well, I can tell you no. I mean, you mean between the two or in each one separately? Well, that's not uniformity between it with, you won't be able to consider the schools and the town as one entity.
No,
Schools don't see themselves
But-
that way.
Right.
what he's saying is, will the town continue to follow the course?
Will the town
No
be
longer
consistent?
pulling her out of the default budget, because technically speaking, you shouldn't, and that is reflected over here in the proposed budget. Are they gonna be consistent on that path? And I think that's what you're asking me. Now, the schools, I don't know.
I think the schools will be consistent as well, but in the opposite way.
Okay, never is. Because it's the
In
kind
fact,
of
they
last
have
year,
default budget
that would be a race to the bottom.
Just, they wave the magic wand, say, this is required by law. we must provide an education, we can't provide an education unless we have lights and electricity's going up, so we have to raise the electricity line in the default budget. And they waive it every time.
You know, you were in town when SB2
Yeah, but it's not.
Yes,
I understood that the default budget was last year's actual expenditures.
no,
No.
Actual
it's
budget.
Actual approved budget.
not expenditures.
With that, private citizens hiring an attorney to sue or something?
Yeah.
That's what everybody was telling me.
Okay,
Ladies and
any other
gentlemen, I
questions?
Are we done?
We meet next week, Wednesday.
I'll be here.
Okay. But for fire and highway, other than that, have a great weekend. Thank you so much, and please send me your questions so that I can make sure I get them all right and submit them to the department.
For the 13th.
No, for anything that you want for fire and highway next week, and definitely